Chapter 5683. Also, could it be that you didn't hear the rustling sound of sand falling to the ground around you? Disaster is imminent and you're still circling around your wife, you scoundrel. The Master of the West faintly woke up at this time. Just now, he had been hit by a roar, the chi and blood in his chest had condensed, and he had fainted. Now that he woke up, he found that the scene in front of him was scarlet, as if a ball of blood had suddenly appeared in his eyes. What was going on? He looked back and forth carefully. The entire hall had completely changed. The wooden boxes that had been hanging in the air were all thrown to the ground. Also, why was the ground and the ceiling completely red? It was so glaring and uncomfortable to look at. The Master of the South and the Master of the North had also retreated from the state of searching for objects. They had both suffered some minor injuries, and looked around in confusion. What's going on? Why are all the doors of the hall closed? It's Master Dongfang. A Shilja from the west regions pointed angrily in the direction of Master Dongfang. He used a scheme to close all the doors of the hall. Sha, the sand and stones are coming. Master Dongfang smiled and nodded. Looking at the sand and stones that were spreading from all directions, a trace of strange relaxation and relief appeared in his eyes. It was finally here. Putting down the mechanism of the main hall would become a forbidden room. At that time, everyone's life and death would no longer be in their own hands. Fate was so strange. Many years ago, his pitiful wife was killed here. Today, he wanted all these people to be buried with his wife. Entering the sacred palace year after year, just to investigate the mysteries of the mechanism, preparing year after year, until now he could finally implement it. The sand and stones were flowing slowly at the beginning, but it increased in speed almost every second. Everyone seemed to be guarding an isolated island at this time. The surrounding seawater spread up, and was about to drown this isolated island. The sand and rocks that were surging towards them were getting closer and closer. Very soon, they would spread all over their desolate island. Baby Mo was still sitting in the middle of the pile of boxes, opening them one by one like opening a gift box. He suddenly opened a wooden box that was very difficult to open, and sent his Shen power inside, but couldn't open it for a long time. Thus, Dudu complained, "This box is even more ridiculous. I don't know if it's empty, I can't open it." The more he couldn't open it, the more he wanted to open it. He took out a small hammer from his inner world. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, he picked up the hammer and began to swing it violently. Everyone was speechless. I must be blind. How could there be such a terrifying brat in this world? Even if you open the box with such violence, do you think the things inside will be intact? Unable to chisel it open, Mo Bao Bao controlled a fire spirit and began to roast it. She then switched to using the water spirit to water it. After a round of manipulation, the box did not move at all. He frowned in distress and took out a pot from his inner world, intending to start a fire. Duan Yu couldn't bear to watch any longer, and his mouth twitched involuntarily as he raised his hand to cover his face. It looked exactly like how Jojo opened the box of hidden weapons back then. It had been in the water, roasted in the fire, and even boiled in a pot of oil. Mo Lien was speechless. She walked up to pick up that brat and tossed the box in his hand to Duan Yu in passing. Although this box looks like the others, it's actually a mechanical box. Chapter 5684. Realization dawned on Baby Mo. It turned out that all his effort was for naught. Back then, your mother picked up a concealed weapon box and operated it like you did. Then, she took out a Tianji treasure map from it. As expected of Jojo's biological child, they really had the same train of thought. What were they thinking? They couldn't open the concealed weapon box, so they rolled in a pot of oil. Could it be that rolling in a pot of oil would make it more fragrant? Baby Mo's eyes brightened, and he turned to wave at his mother. Is it true, mother? Is it true? Daddy said that you picked up a concealed weapon box back then and tossed around in water, fire, and oil just like me. Who was like you? You're exactly the same as your father. Sir Jojo expressionlessly returned a glance at his son. She didn't. Baby Mo puffed up his cheeks. Daddy, Mother said she didn't. His father really wanted to retort, anything that your mother refuses to admit is 99% likely an embarrassing matter. But when his wife's gaze swept over, his father immediately switched to an icy expression and hollered at his son, "How could your mother be as stupid as you? Preposterous. Baby Mo." Daddy's style changed so quickly that he was practically like a retard and hard to communicate with. While they were speaking, Duan Yu had already opened the mechanism box, and a ball of light mist floated out. The Western Master suddenly shouted and pounced at that ball of light mist. However, before he could get close, he was ruthlessly kicked out by a flying leg. Sir Jojo expressionlessly glanced at the restless crowd. "Come over if you don't want to die." Everyone, if they found it themselves, Jojo wouldn't even glance at it. But this thing was found by her obedient son and opened by her son's adoptive father, so it should belong to her son. No one could snatch away her son's things. Baby Mo bounced up and scooped up that ball of light mist. What is this? How surprising. She didn't expect that the pauper heavenly law grandpa would actually bury a treasure in the main hall. How could something that could be placed so meticulously inside a mechanism box be an ordinary item? The thousands of boxes around it were probably used as a cover for it, hee hee. At this moment, the cold mechanical voice came from midair again. First place on the Providence roll, Mo Shao. Obtained an ultimate holy artifact, insignificant holy robe. Points, 99,999. Everyone was speechless. At this moment, the Western Master, who had been kicked far away by Jojo, slammed his fist on the ground and shouted angrily, "It's my Saint Cloth. Damn it, after so many years of painstaking effort to obtain this thing, it was actually taken away by this little brat." That was the Wuhua Saint Robe. With this Wuhua Saint Robe, why would he be afraid of immortal venerables and hierarch realm cultivators? Even a punch from a paragon might not be able to penetrate the unadorned Saint Robe. Ah. He was unwilling to accept this. The expressions of the Master of the South and the others changed again and again. Especially when they saw that mischievous little brat unfold the Saint Cloth with a shake of his little hand, their hearts bled. The material of this Saint Cloth was very rare. It was a thin layer of transparent and unadorned. It could expand or shrink at will. Even if it was placed on a jacket, it would look like it was not on at all. It would quickly merge with the jacket, and the naked eye would not be able to distinguish it at all. The little brat shook his little arms and legs and jumped in his father's arms. His father smacked him in annoyance. "Stop fooling around." Chapter 5685. This child was really a troublesome fellow. Didn't he see the wolf-like gazes around him? They couldn't wait to take this chubby child away in one bite. Damn it, damn it. The Western Master continuously pounded the ground, pounding it for nearly a dozen times. Baby Mo turned his head to look, and his eyes couldn't help but widen. Hey, you, stop pounding uncle. Whoosh! The blood sword that was originally stuck in the ground was actually bounced out by the Western Master's continuous pounding of the ground in anger and unwillingness. Everyone looked at the Western Master with a dumbfounded expression. At the same time, the last bit of red light finally seeped into the giant dragon's slightly opened eyes. Everyone froze in an instant. They watched as the giant dragon's originally dim eyes came alive because of the red light. The pair of dragon eyes actually blinked. A Western region practitioner fell to the ground on his butt and exclaimed, "It's alive. Holy shit, it's really alive." The huge dragon that was originally embedded in the ground suddenly broke out of the ground. With a huge dragon swinging its tail, it immediately sent more than a dozen cultivators standing behind the Western Master, who had dumbfounded expressions on their faces, flying out. They crashed heavily onto the beam above the main hull. Then, they were half dead and dying. Everyone couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. The giant dragon sent them flying with a single blow, and in the end, so many practitioners were killed. How strong was its strength? This was a super strong sacred beast, the guardian beast of the main hull. Everyone couldn't help but want to cry. But at this moment, Master Dongfang was laughing maniacally, immensely proud of himself. Eat them, eat them. Master Dongfang pointed in the direction of the Western Master and the others, the flames of vengeance seeping out of his eyes. The Western Master couldn't help but explode, rolling and crawling to avoid the giant dragon's claws. He rushed to shout at Master Dongfang, "Old Dongfang, you old fool. It's actually you who planned this. I want all of you to stay here and be buried with my wife." "You're crazy." The Southern Master shouted in fear. "Back then, your wife and the Western Master fought over the Uawa Saint robe in the main hall. It was also out of greed. She can't blame anyone for her death. Everyone was just taking what they needed. Furthermore, she was the one who accidentally triggered the trap and died. None of us killed her." Master Dongfang sneered, "That's right. She only has herself to blame. Today, you greedy people will be buried in a place like the sacred palace. Isn't that a worthy death? Ha 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 ha." The Master of the South was furious. He wished he could immediately rush to the front of the Master of the East and teach her a lesson. However, the dragon circling in the sky suddenly turned around and roared at them. The Master of the South immediately fell backwards in a crooked manner. "It's over, it's over, it's over. This Master Dongfang Yu is really crazy. He actually wants all of them to stay in the main hall to be buried with his wife. He's simply a madman. That saint beast would kill all of them." Baby Mo hugged his father's neck and couldn't help but cry out, "Grand Marshal Uncle, Grand Marshal Uncle, Grand Marshal Uncle, save me, Grand Marshal Uncle." Arbor, who was about to summon Little White Snake and the others, couldn't help but twitch his eyes. What's going on? His son actually developed a habit of summoning Grand Marshal Uncle for no reason. That silly look of calling for help, why is it so adorable? The giant dragon heard a little childish voice and turned its big head around. With a sweep of its tail, it sent a few people flying, pouncing over aggressively. Chapter 5686. Against the Heavens appeared out of nowhere and slashed down with his sword, creating a trench on the ground. That vigorous power forced the giant dragon to scurry back with just one move. Then, everyone saw this senior's actions. She carried the big sword and chased after the giant dragon. She slashed and fought and shouted as she fought. "I'll beat you to death, you little bastard. How dare you scare my great-grandson? How dare you scare him?" She hit the dragon until there were bumps on its head and it shrank back in fear. If the dragon could hug its head with its front claws, it would probably be hugging its head and squatting in the corner. Sob, 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 where did this crazy human come from? Heaven's will, where was Heaven's will? Why didn't Heaven's will show its face at such a crucial moment? Why didn't Heaven's will come and save it? It was just a baby. Heaven's will, who was hiding in the corner and watching, felt extremely aggrieved. Not only was his temple guardian beast touched, it was also beaten up by against the Heavens. "Do you admit defeat?" Everyone saw this senior knock the dragon's head and shouted. After asking 3 times, the dragon's head was about to fall off. Everyone's eyes twitched. "Senior, are you blind? The dragon's head was about to fall off. Did you not see it, or did you see it and continue hitting it? Transform." Against the Heavens gave the dragon a punch. The dragon obediently kept its claws and teeth and shrunk into the size of a small snake, wriggling in front of against the Heavens. Against the heavens carried it back with a look of disdain and shook it in front of baby Imo. Good grandson, do you want it? No. Just as everyone's faces were filled with envy, they heard the little lousy child's childish voice refuse. Fuck, it's a rejection. This was a sacred beast and that little rascal actually said no, without even blinking. Just how rich and overbearing are you to recklessly waste natural resources? At this moment, everyone was itching to rush up to that senior, licking their faces and saying, yes, 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 yes. But the senior didn't even look at them. If you don't want it, then kill it. Do you like dragon meat? Baby Mo shook his head. Against the heavens turned to Arbor. Baby Mo, do you want to eat dragon meat? Before Arbor could reply, a young man in black clothes appeared beside Mo Yen and glared at Arbor. Master, master, your wife just wants to eat dragon meat. Mo Yen quickly comforted him. Okay, Jojo didn't say he wanted to eat it. The little dragon that Qin Nitian's hand was so scared that its heart was about to stop. It shook its head and it was crying. Baby Mo glanced at it and felt that it was rather pitiful. You're too cruel. You just killed someone. Ah, Arbor of Arbor, why did this dragon like to howl of the night? Seeing that it truly looked a bit miserable with its head full of bumps, Xiaomu reluctantly opened her mouth. Son, those people aren't dead yet. They can survive after drinking some medicine. The little dragon nodded its head, indicating that it didn't kill them. It wasn't cruel at all. Baby Mo thought for a moment. Okay, I'll ask senior granduncle not to eat you, but you have to listen to me in the future. The dragon head nodded. It finally understood that even the heavens of heaven couldn't save it at this time. Other than saving itself, it had no other choice. In order to live, sob, no matter how humiliating the terms were, it had to grit its teeth and agree. Sob the heavens of heaven hid at the side and couldn't help but wipe its tears. Arbor and the rest were too shameless. Chapter 5687. They even wanted to take away the guardian sacred beast that he placed in the main palace. These people were really heartless. The most abominable one was Qin Nitian. She was an accomplice to the evildoer. Look at what she had done. If she hadn't subdued the guardian sacred beast, how could these people subdue his sacred beast so easily? Bah! Just thinking about it made one's heart ache. This was all because of that crazy Master Dongfang. If he hadn't caused so much trouble, the guardian sacred beast wouldn't have woken up at all, and wouldn't have been taken away by others. These masters of the sacred domain, every one of them that he liked should be replaced. Master Dongfang, who had been hiding behind the pillar, couldn't help but stick out his head in astonishment. Why was it like this? How could it be like this? That seemingly aggressive and incomparably brave sacred beast was actually subdued by someone. Then what should he do next? He was still counting on this sacred beast to kill all these greedy people on the spot and bury them with his wife. It didn't matter. They couldn't get out anyway. None of these people could escape. The sand and stones on the ground spread extremely quickly. Now, it had already reached everyone's calves. In less than half an hour, the entire main palace would be covered by sand and stones. That's right. At that time, everyone present here would be wrapped in sand and stones in the main palace. Even if they could use a defensive barrier to resist for a while. But there were still more than 10 hours before the sacred palace closed. They couldn't stop it at all. Master Dongfang laughed crazily. Good. Everyone will be buried with my wife. Damn old man, go to hell. Master Dongfang screamed. Raising the two flying swords in his hands, he pounced angrily towards Master Dongfang. The rest of the people were stunned and couldn't react for a moment. They were extremely distressed. Should they first solve the problem in front of them, or should they help Master Dongfang deal with that perverted Master Dongfang? Master Dongfang and Master Dongfang had already started fighting. They were all experts above the immortal venerable realm. When they fought, the wind whistled and the dust billowed. The entire main palace was originally covered with sand and stones. Because of the seal, the air didn't circulate very well. Now that the two of them were fighting, it naturally made the hall even more chaotic. Everyone's eyes were almost unable to see clearly. He could only hear the rustling of the wind, accompanied by a few roars. The Master of the West seemed to have joined the battle as well. Together with the Master of the South, they joined forces to deal with the Master of the East. Occasionally, the sound of the Master of the North sighing could be heard. "Everyone, can you please stop?" Against the sky threw the little reptile to baby Mo and turned to look at the messy hall. "Little treasure, why are these people so unreliable?" Sir Jojo nodded vigorously. "Uncle, the matters here are almost settled. You should go back and rest." "All right." Against the sky smiled and patted Jojo's head. "I invited your master to play chess, but he fell asleep halfway through. I'll go back and see if she's awake." Arbor, everyone waved goodbye to the senior and heaved a sigh of relief. Feng Changqing muttered softly, "Every time senior appears, I always feel flustered and short of breath." Although this senior had never used his aura to intimidate them, they always felt that in front of him, they were so small. Chapter 5688. Indeed. Little Taisui nodded solemnly. Senior is someone that even Heavenly Tao has to avoid. It's not that we are insignificant, but that senior is too powerful. Everyone thought about little Taisui's words and recalled Heavenly Tao's cowardly behavior before nodding in unison. That was indeed the case. Arbor coughed and waved away the billowing smoke in front of him. "Why isn't the fight over yet?" 2 against 1, the Western and Southern Masters teamed up to fight Master Dongfang, but they still couldn't determine a victor. They didn't know if Master Dongfang was too powerful or if those two masters were too weak. Duan Yu raised his hand and threw out a barrier, blocking the boundless sand and dust on the left side of the main hall. The area where they stood was slightly better. At least, the smell of sand and dust in their nostrils had lessened by a lot. However, the chaos outside the barrier was still a blur. They could only vaguely make out 3 figures flying back and forth in the clouds of sand, going up and down. Occasionally, they would exchange a few punches or palms, and the sounds of collisions would ring out incessantly. Wah! Suddenly, the Western Master spat out a large mouthful of blood. His body swayed several times before he abruptly collapsed to the ground, dispirited. He glared at Master Dongfang in disbelief. On the other side, the Southern Master also stumbled back a few steps, his legs nearly unsteady. The Northern Master quickly went up to support him and looked at Master Dongfang in disapproval. "Brother Dongfang, why do you have to do this? You planned for so many days to avenge your wife, all for today. You completely disregarded our brotherly relationship of so many years." Master Dongfang started spitting blood as soon as he opened his mouth. It was evident that he was severely injured when fighting with those 2 people earlier. What brotherly relationship, it's all bullshit. Master Dongfang glared hatefully at the Northern Master and pointed at him as he cursed, "Do you think you can escape? I'm telling you, not a single person present today can think of escaping." He still clearly remembered that when the Western Master quarreled with him and his wife back then, the Southern and Northern Masters didn't mind the commotion and just watched from the side from beginning to end. What close friends! It was all bullshit. At the crucial moment, didn't the Master of the North watch his wife get shot to death by the mechanism in the main hall? It was obvious that he could have helped her with just a lift of his hand. He was actually the most sinister and vicious of them all. All these years, in order not to alert the enemy, he had been feigning civility with the Master of the North. In fact, he had long wanted to kill him. "You despicable man!" The Southern Master clutched his chest, his face contorted in pain as he said, You poisoned the sand. As he spoke, the Western master spat out another mouthful of blood, and his expression quickly withered. Master Dongfang laughed heartily with a smug look on his face. How about it? You didn't expect that, did you? I want all of you to die here today. Humph, ha ha ha. Arbor shook his head. This Master Dongfang Yu was really a weirdo. Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. If you want to avenge your wife, you have to find the right person. If he inexplicably dragged everyone into the water, then it wouldn't be as simple as taking revenge. At this moment, the sand in front of him was hazy. The Southern Master couldn't see where Arbor and the others were standing at all. He could only shout at the top of his lungs, "Young Master Mo, Madam Mo, you're here. Please hurry up and make a move." The Uncle Master that Madam Mo had summoned just now was someone that even holy beasts had to obediently lie down when they saw him. Don't even think about it. Chapter 5689. A venomous glint shot out of Master Dongfang's eyes, and he abruptly pounced at Master Southern. Would he give them a chance to call for help? Don't joke around. These people all deserve to die. They all deserve to pay with their lives for his beloved wife. Didn't they love to fight and snatch? Didn't they love to snatch treasures by force? Then let them accompany his pitiful beloved wife and stay in this sacred palace forever and ever, ahahaha. Master Dongfang laughed maniacally in irritation, firmly pressing down on Master Southern and Master Western. His abruptly stretched body caused the two to widen their eyes in fright, and they trembled all over. Master Dongfang, this lunatic, actually self-destructed in such a confined space. Oh, why? Boom! The turbulence was so great that it sent all the nearby cultivators flying. The little stoic reflexively bounced onto her husband. Mo Yen even mercilessly tossed his son out, and he hastily reached out to hug her. The bewildered baby Mo was accurately tossed to Venerable Peach Blossom by his father. The latter was speechless. As if he had caught a hot potato, he lowered his head and stared at this child. The little fellow instantly felt like his father only thought of his mother in the face of impending disaster and completely ignored the grievance in his eyes. His small mouth gaped, aggrieved, and he had the urge to cry. Venerable Peach Blossom was both amused and exasperated. He hugged this squishy little ball and lightly patted him. Then, he turned around and roared at Mo Yen, "Are you crazy?" Sir Jojo punched him. "Why did you throw your son?" Mo Yen was a bit embarrassed. Wasn't this a conditioned reflex? When he saw his wife bouncing over, he reached out to hug his wife. Everything else could be thrown away. The little dumpling sniffled and pitifully hid in rotten Peach Blossom's embrace, using the back of his head to face his father. Sir Jojo was also a bit embarrassed. This was a bad habit that Mo Yen had taught her since she was a child. Whenever there was an earth-shattering noise, she would jump into Mo Yen's arms for no reason. Sovereign Peach Blossom was annoyed at the sight of the two of them. He hugged baby Mo and patted him, comforting him softly, "Little dumpling, don't be angry. Let's not play with your daddy and mommy anymore." After the turbulence passed, Arbor coughed a few times and waved the dust in front of his eyes. The sand and stones piled up from all directions had already buried them up to their knees. Everyone floated into the air one after another, waving the sand in front of them as they looked over. Many saint-level cultivators were flung around, on the verge of death. Some of them had already fainted, probably due to the shockwaves of the explosion. The drifting sand quickly covered their bodies with a thin layer. If this continued, he would definitely be buried alive. "Save them," Jojo ordered. Feng Zhangqing and the others moved together. In groups of 2 or 3, they carried out the people buried in the sand and threw them to one side. Arbor stepped forward and took out a bottle of medicinal liquid. He dripped 1 or 2 drops into each person's nose. Soon, the people of the saint level woke up and thanked him repeatedly. This trial in the sacred palace was really too difficult. Not only did many people not gain anything, but they also almost lost their lives. Master Dongfang self-destructed and dragged Master South and Master West down with him. The three corpses were now completely buried under the sand. Although Master Bei Bei was closer, at least he was not pressed down by Master Dongfang. He managed to keep his life, but his left hand was crippled. Chapter 5690. At this moment, he couldn't help but cover his crippled left arm and laugh bitterly. Madame Mo, thank you for your help. Arbor glanced at the Master of the North and didn't say anything. After rescuing the group of people from the sanctuary, Mo Lien said, "It seems like this place will soon be submerged by sand and stones. Let's get the Heavenly Tao to open the exit of the palace for us as soon as possible. It's not difficult to get out." Suddenly, a voice floated in the air. Everyone looked up and saw that it was indeed the Heavenly Tao. He was floating above the main hall and looking at them with a pitiful gaze. How pitiful! The Heavenly Tao sighed. Look at you all in such a sorry state. Even I can't bear to see you like this. Then will you give us some compensation? Zhang Jing's sudden voice made the Heavenly Tao choke. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. No. The Heavenly Tao immediately denied it in a huff. Ba ba ba, a group of greedy humans. Even the guardian beast of this old man was abducted along the way, and they still wanted compensation. Compensation for your entire family. Do you still want to go out? The Heavenly Tao asked in annoyance. Everyone nodded. Resources were just worldly possessions. Now that even their little lives were about to be played, they naturally had to withdraw if they could. If they couldn't do it this year, there was still next year. At most, they could enter the sacred palace again next year to train. They couldn't open hell mode every year, right? I've realized that after so many years, there isn't a single decent master in the sacred realm. Take advantage of the fact that all of you elite disciples are here. Let's all discuss and elect a lord of the sacred region to discuss with me in detail. Master of the sanctuary. The Shouja from the 4 regions looked at each other. The 3 masters of the eastern, western, and southern regions were all dead anyway. Electing a new master was nothing. However, the master of the north was living well. This was a bit awkward. The Heavenly Tao's words made it clear that even the master of the north looked down on him. The big-bellied man stood up and cupped his hands. Does the Heavenly Tao mean to elect a master of the sanctuary to govern the north, south, west, east, and west regions? Is it that hard to understand what I'm saying? Tian Dao glared at them impatiently. Have you thought it through? Everyone had a flash of inspiration and hurriedly nodded. They cupped their hands and said in unison, "We are willing to recommend Madame Mo as the master of the holy region." Jojo? What the hell? You guys are willing, but Sir Jojo isn't. Have you asked Sir Jojo if he's willing? Except for the people from the Northern Territory who were a little stunned, the people from the other 3 territories all bowed in the direction of Arbor. Greetings, Master. The Master of the North was very embarrassed. He felt a sense of defeat, as if he had been kicked out of his position. The Heavenly Tao Elder looked at them with gratification. That's good. Then I'll send you out. Heavenly Tao, what are you doing? The Heavenly Tao secretly thought to himself, I'll find something for you, little bastard, to do, so that you won't be idle all the time and always want to summon your master and martial uncle and find trouble with me. This little bastard was busy, so he had to stop now. The people from the Northern Territory looked at the Master of the North and then at Arbor. They hurriedly went forward and bowed. Greetings, Master. The Heavenly Tao had already said that he would recommend this person as the Master of the Sanctuary. Who would dare to say no? The Master of the North was instantly embarrassed and didn't know what to do. Chapter 5691. Should he continue to feign ignorance and pretend that he didn't hear the people of the northern region call Madame Mo, Master? Or should he simply step forward to greet her and respectfully address her as master? Just as the northern master was in a dilemma, the large group was transported to the sacred palace's entrance. When the northern master looked up, he discovered that he had been released from the main hall by heavenly law along with the group of people. At the same time that he breathed a sigh of relief, he couldn't help but feel a bit melancholy. The situation was hopeless. That Madame Mo could be considered as heavenly law's default choice for the master of the holy domain, right? What right did he have to compete with her? Looking down at his crippled left hand, the master of the north sighed and simply walked to the back of the crowd without saying a word. After being led out of the sacred palace's entrance by Mo Yen, Arbor turned back to glance at her son who was huffing and puffing with rage. Guilt welled up spontaneously. Her husband actually lost their son when danger struck. The little stoic tried her best to glare at her husband, but the latter blinked and innocently looked back at his wife. At that time, it was really just a conditioned reflex. Mo Yen felt that it was merely because he was already used to hugging his wife. The little dumpling was very angry and didn't even pay attention to his parents. He kept facing the couple with the back of his head. Now that he saw heavenly law hanging in the sacred palace with a wooden face, the little fellow waved his small hand in heavenly law's direction. Goodbye. Old grandpa, I'll come again next year. Heavenly law looked at him expressionlessly. He directly raised his sleeve and slammed the palace's door shut with a bang. Everyone silently twitched their mouths. Baby Mo looked up at Divine Peach Blossom in confusion. Uncle Peach Blossom, what's wrong with old grandpa? Divine Peach Blossom suppressed his belly full of laughter and glanced down at the child. Maybe he's a bit angry when he sees you. Everyone, Baby Mo harumphed and thought, old grandpa isn't happy when he sees me, but I'm even more unhappy when I see him. Master. An Eastern region cultivator cupped his hands at Arbor. Then let's return first. Arbor nodded slightly, not feeling anything about this title of master. She felt that this was a trap that heavenly law dug for her. Why did it suddenly throw her the title of master? Master. At this moment, the practitioners from the western and southern regions also gathered around. Master, are you going back with the people from the eastern region? Her bamboo garden was in the eastern region. Where else could she go if she didn't go home? Master, since Elder Heavenly Tao's intention is to unite the entire sanctuary, then Master should consider whether it's time for you to settle down in our western and southern regions. Right, right. Jojo looked at them expressionlessly. We'll talk about this later. What's the difference between your western and southern regions and the eastern regions? Weren't they all covered in a vast expanse of white fog? Speaking of the fog, Xiaomu pondered in her mind. How about she find a day to see if the realm of misfortune could absorb all the white fog in the eastern domain clean? If the holy land and holy water could nurture a piece of land, then perhaps in a few years, this wretched piece of land would be able to flourish. At that time, those pitiful adults who risked their lives to escape prison to send their children out of the sanctuary might be able to live a good life. With this thought in mind, Arbor glanced at the people from the eastern region. Will you all listen to me in the future? Chapter 5692. Of course. The eastern region's cultivators hastily cupped their hands. What a joke. Since Heavenly Tao had already spoken, if they still blindly disobeyed, wouldn't they be seeking trouble for themselves? Arbor nodded reluctantly with a taut face. Then in the future, don't make excuses when I ask you to do something. Yes. Yes. Sir Jojo turned to look at the other three regions. I'll return to the eastern region first. You guys go back and wait for news. Wait for what news? Everyone was confused. During this trip to the Holy Palace, 3 of the 4 masters were destroyed, and the last one was also crippled and stripped of his master position by Heavenly Tao. Arbor didn't gain much from this trip. The biggest beneficiary was the number 1 person on the Providence roll, our little classmate Mo Xiao. This guy struck it rich without a sound. He found a bloody sword in the middle hall and also obtained the inconspicuous saint garment in the main hall. The funniest thing was that he had already taken a lot of things before he found the inconspicuous saint garment while sitting among a pile of boxes and opening gift boxes. Baby Emo stored all of these into his inner world. He was originally quite happy, but Daddy left him behind, so Baby felt a bit sullen. Arbor shuffled to his son's side and carried him over, coaxing softly, "Little dumpling, let's beat Daddy together later and vent your anger for you." "Mommy, didn't you say before that we can't beat Daddy?" Arbor thought about it and nodded. That's indeed the case. But Daddy was in the wrong this time. Beating him is to make him remember. Baby Mo shook his small head. "Forget it. Daddy doesn't grow wise and won't remember." Arbor, the little stoic, looked back at her husband strangely. Her son understood his father quite well. "Unfortunately, I don't have a wife." Little Dumpling looked up at the sky sadly. "Mo Lien, 2 against 1, I have no chance of winning." Venerable Peach Blossom chortled and pinched the little fellow's chubby cheeks. "I'll find you one when we go back." "Forget it." Xiao Tuanzi looked up at the sky with a hopeless expression. A wife is something that can only be found by chance. Some people were born with a wife, while others never had a wife in their entire lives. Everything is fate. I'll just follow it. Everyone was speechless. Arbor? What was going on? Why did the scene suddenly go awry? On the second day after everyone returned to the Holy Realm, Arbor ordered people to post a notice and found more than a dozen free laborers. Among them were the big-bellied men, He Weiping and Zhang Jing, who had volunteered. Reclaim wasteland? Everyone asked in confusion. But how do we reclaim wasteland in this vast white fog? Let me absorb the white fog and take a look at the terrain first. Jojo took out the heart of misfortune and tossed it into the air. The white fog from all directions quickly gathered towards this place. Indeed, it covered the sky and the earth as it surged and rolled. Arbor blinked and turned back to say to Zhang Jing and the others, "All right, let it absorb for a few days. We'll come back and take a look then." If the Holy Realm could develop and become rich together, these Holy Realm cultivators wouldn't have to live so bitterly, Arbor thought. These people had lived such horrible lives for so many years. He seriously couldn't bear to see it. Each of the Transcendent Realm cultivators lived worse than the ordinary civilians of the lower star domain. They risked their lives for food every day. It was too miserable. Look at the burning eyes. He really didn't want to see so many idiots. Chapter 5693. 3 days later, the mist in the eastern region was completely absorbed. Such a big move shocked the people in the other 3 regions. Everyone rushed to the eastern region like a swarm of bees, wanting to see what was going on. What they saw was incredible. The mist in the eastern region was completely swept away. Ah! Suddenly hearing a shy scream, Arbor looked up and saw a female cultivator wearing a piece of ragged cloth. She hurriedly covered her body, turned around, and ran away. He Weiping smiled awkwardly at Arbor. In the past, the mist was boundless, and the visibility was very low. People couldn't see each other clearly from half a meter away. Now that the mist is suddenly lifted, everyone is a little embarrassed. What embarrassment? It was obviously that female cultivator who found that her slovenly appearance was seen by everyone, so she hurriedly ran away to wash up. Look at these idiots, what kind of life did they live day by day? Because people couldn't see each other's faces clearly, it was possible that they didn't wipe their faces for a few years. He Weiping's hair was also a little messy. At this time, he was scratching his head in embarrassment. We'll go back to wash up. We'll come back tomorrow to find Master. He Weiping's face turned red from the little guy's disdainful gaze. He hurriedly took Zhang Jing and the others back to the newly built bamboo house to wash up. A small female cultivator, wrapped in a dirty blanket, squeezed through the crowd and came to Arbor's side. Her voice seemed to crawl out of hell as she said faintly, "Master, what should we do?" Now that the fog had been parted, people could see each other clearly. For people like them who hadn't built a bamboo house yet, if they slept on the streets, wouldn't they be seen clearly by others? "I don't care what you do. Go back and build your own house," Master Jojo roared. Everyone hurriedly covered their heads and ran away. In your dreams, you want Master Jojo to pay for your bamboo house. Bah, bah. Being poor is not your excuse. Master Jojo is not a child of wealth, humph. Those who had houses were happy, those who didn't were miserable. Many female cultivators could only go to houses with buildings and pay some rent to stay there for a period of time. Now that the streets were empty, there was nothing to cover them. It would be embarrassing for them to lie down on the streets. Look at these people. Arbor pointed at the crowd that had scattered like birds and beasts. He was furious. When they ascended from the middle 6 prefectures, I guess each and every one of them was considered a person. Mo Lien and the others looked at Arbor, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What did he mean by considered a person? He was definitely a famous figure. Look at these fellows. They don't think about improving themselves after arriving at the Saint region. They just eat and wait for death every day. They're living like salted fish. Sir Jojo said resentfully, if their juniors in the lower star field of the middle 6 prefectures knew that their ancestors were all like this, what would they think? The corner of Venerable Peach Blossom's mouth twitched. Thinking back to the past, he seemed to have been just like this, waiting for death to come. Fortunately, Qiao Qiao had summoned him back, making his life a little more colorful. Salted fish have no future. The little stoic waved her small hand and forcefully spat out this sentence. Everyone nodded repeatedly, expressing their agreement. Chongqing, go and issue a public announcement for me. Gather everyone in the Eastern Domain here tomorrow at 7 a.m. I want to give them special training. Everyone. Chapter 56-94. The practitioners of the Eastern region started to run out of luck. Their master, Sob, suddenly summoned them to the square in front of the bamboo house every day as if he was on steroids. It could be considered a square. In fact, it was just an open space for them to train. Every day, he waved a small vine whip in front of them. Their master was extremely displeased with them. Sometimes, he used an image array to record their training scenes. He even threatened to bring it to Tsang Prefecture and Ming Prefecture in the future for their juniors to admire. They wanted to admire how their ancestors who had ascended to the sanctuary started their salted lives. Sob, their master was really wicked to the extreme. How could he be so careless? Their master's actions were simply heartbreaking for the practitioners of the Eastern region. After 5 consecutive days of training, an Eastern region practitioner began to slander, "Master, you train our practitioners of the Eastern region every day. You said that in the future, you want us to cultivate wastelands together. Our physical fitness must be trained well first. But we feel that since you are the master of the entire sanctuary, then no matter east, west, north, south, east, we should treat everyone equally, right?" Yes, what Brother Zhang said is very reasonable. He Weiping twitched the corner of his mouth and said seriously, I also feel that what Brother Zhang said is reasonable. Master, since our future goal is to be prosperous together, then first, we have to unify the pace of training, don't you think so? Everyone nodded. Pairs of shining dog eyes looked at Lord Qiao Qiao. They cupped their hands together and said, Master, please give the order to transfer the people from the other 3 regions to exercise together. It was better to be happy together than to be happy alone. There was no reason to let the brothers and sisters of the Eastern region live such a miserable life. Arbor thought so too. He waved his hand and issued another order: gather the practitioners of the other 3 regions at the square in front of the bamboo house tomorrow morning. The miserable life of the brothers of the sanctuary began. The young master sent people to supervise their training every day. When he was free, he led the group to cultivate wastelands. However, what made everyone the happiest was that in front of the bamboo house, the first piece of wastelands that was cultivated gradually showed results under the cultivation of the sacred land and sacred water. A month later, almost every household in the eastern region had built a bamboo house and lived a peaceful and happy life. Baby Imo had nothing to do every day, so he was sent to school by his father. He had nothing to live for, so he spent his days with a group of young children. On this day, the children packed up their things and walked home after school. Suddenly, someone tugged at him. Baby Imo turned around to take a look, then suddenly turned around. She raised her small fist and punched the man in the face. Ouch! That person fell to the ground, covered his nose and cried out in pain. You little brat, why did you hit people? Guangguang Darren was carrying Baby Mo's little school bag and was rushing over from behind. When he saw the person lying on the ground, his little face immediately darkened. Mother said that those who like to lie on the ground, 8 or 9 out of 10, are trying to scam others. That's right. Baby Mo looked at him warily. Old grandpa, why are you hiding behind me? Are you trying to trick me? The old man stood up with a hunched back and rolled his eyes in annoyance. Little Gongzi, don't be ungrateful. I have a secret talisman book here, it is never given to outsiders. I guarantee that you will learn it after reading it, and you will be invincible. Ha ha ha. Baby Mo couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 5695. Who would have thought that someone would actually look for him to sell talisman manuals? Could this old grandpa be a retard? Baby Mo waved his hand at the old man. Old grandpa, squat down. The old man took out an extremely old and worn book from his bag and pointed at the book cover with 2 fingers. Little Gongzi, take a look. This talisman manual of mine is a rare treasure. Are you new here? Lord Guangguang asked curiously. Ah. Did you just ascend to our sacred saint region today? The old man rolled his eyes. Child, do you have any special meaning for asking this question? Of course there was a special meaning, but Lord Guangguang was too lazy to tell him. In the sacred saint region, there was no one who did not know of Master Yu's precious son. What do you want to exchange this talisman manual for? The old man's eyes lit up. I see the treasured sword at little Gongzi's waist. Before the old man's hand could touch the cloud mist sword, it was slapped down by Lord Guangguang. So it was because of his Baby Mo's blood sword. Ever since Baby Mo took this blood sword out of the sacred palace, it had been hanging on his waist. This kind of sacred weapon could change in size, but now it had shrunk to the size of a small bamboo knife and was hanging on Baby Mo's waist. This sword seemed to have a trace of moonlight circulating around it, shining brightly and dazzling people from far away. No wonder this old man had evil thoughts about little Furball when he just ascended to the sacred saint region. This old man was originally an elder of the Tsang region's talisman aristocratic family, Qi clan. Ah, I met you when I met you because we were fated to meet. Hee, why don't you give the small knife hanging on little Gongzi's waist to this old man? This old man will give this world's #1 talisman manual to little Gongzi. Lord Guangguang curled his lips behind the old man. Could it be that all the talisman aristocratic families in Tsang region were as shameless as this person in front of him? Casually taking out a tattered book to exchange for little Furball's treasured sword from the sacred palace, ah pooey. They weren't children anymore. How could they fall for such a trick and be deceived like this? Xiao Tuanzi glanced at the tattered book in the old man's hand and waved at him with a smile. Grandpa, squat down a little more. You're too tall, so we can't talk on equal footing. Okay. I'll listen to you. This elder from the Azure Prefecture's talisman clan grinned as he squatted down, and he couldn't help but praise in his heart as he looked at the handsome and exquisite little boy before him. Sure enough, the sacred region had produced so many monstrous young geniuses. Pa! The old man was startled. He suddenly realized that someone had pasted a pure gold talisman on his forehead. It was made of paper and was even floating in front of his forehead. He squatted there, his entire body frozen. He found that he couldn't move at all, let alone stand up. He squatted there with his front foot half a step forward and his back foot slightly bent. His old face revealed an incomparably shocked expression. "Liar, Grandpa, just stay here for the night." Xiao Tuanzi snorted as he took small steps forward, then bounced back. The little fellow pounced on the old man's back and searched him from head to toe, inside and out. He then took out several dozen talismans from his pocket. He looked at them one by one and shook his head repeatedly. "Big liar. What Tsang region's talisman aristocratic family? Your drawing can't even compare to mine when I was 2 years old. I'm ignoring you, big liar." Chapter 5696. During dinner at night, Arbor asked his son with a grin, "Did anything interesting happen at school today?" The little furball shook his head listlessly. "I played with a bunch of underage kids. Every day, besides reading those retarded books, I played with mud and picked some flowers and grass to weave some messy things. Mom, it's such a waste of time." Arbor patted his son's small head. "You're still young, so it's fine to waste some time. Moreover, this boy would hide in the star domain every day after school to draw talismans and refine pills. Sometimes, when he entered a cultivation state, he would completely forget the time. Speaking of which, he blushed with shame. His mother was a bit of a salted fish, yet his son was extremely motivated. Arbor saw that he was too hard-working. At such a young age, it was better to have more time to play. "Mom, on the way back, I ran into an old grandpa who was peddling talisman manuals to me." Arbor, adoptive father, that old grandpa said he was an elder of Tsangzhou's talisman patrician family, the Qi family. "Who is he? Do you know him?" Duan Yu was startled and quickly shook his head. "I don't know him. Your adoptive father is Tsangzhou's emperor, so how would he know about people like cats and dogs? If you ask him who the patriarch of Tsangzhou's Qi family is, he might know. How would he know about this elder or whatnot?" The little stoic explained to her son. The little furball nodded. "Oh, then it's fine if he doesn't know him." Mo Lien ladled a bowl of soup for his wife, and the corner of his eyes twitched for no reason. "What do you mean? What did you do to him?" "I didn't do anything." The little furball looked innocent. "That big swindler grandpa. I suspect that he might not be a member of Tsangzhou's Qi family at all. Damn swindler. The talismans he drew can't even compare to the ones I drew when I was 2. The little furball harumphed. Seeing his parents' and uncles' gazes sweeping towards him, the little fellow angrily took out a handful of lousy talismans from his pocket and threw them on the table. "Look, these are really ugly." Everyone, Arbor took them out for a look and nodded in agreement with his son's point of view. "They are ugly. When I first learned how to draw talismans at the age of 7, my talismans were even better than this." The mother and son looked at the talismans drawn by the old man one by one and criticized in unison, "It's too ugly." Everyone was speechless. "Both of you, mother and son, stop talking. Don't use your weird talisman drawing skills to compare with the talisman grandmasters. You're not even on the same starting line. Big liar." The mother and son scolded at the same time, curling their lips with the same expression. Venerable Peach Blossom almost spat out a mouthful of wine. He hurriedly turned around and coughed twice. No, no, no. How could he chat with Xiao Tuanzi while eating? Damn it, he wanted to laugh whenever he talked about it. He couldn't even eat properly. Mo Lien pursed her lips and looked at her little brat speechlessly. What did you do to her? Nothing. This swindler grandpa, does he think I'm a 3 to 5-year-old kid? He actually said that he wanted to use that lousy talisman manual to exchange for my cloud sky. Humph, I took out a body-securing talisman and slapped it on his head. Xiao Tuanzi snorted and tilted her little head. He was fixed there by me. Everyone, where? At the front door of the school. Fairy Ginkgo giggled and said, Child, how can you bully people like this? He just ascended to the holy region on the first day, and you fixed him at the front door of the school. I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. Go and release him. Mo Lien was helpless and turned to order Aoyi. Chapter 5697. Mo Bao Bao curled his lips. That old grandpa was a liar. He actually wanted to let him go. Wasn't that letting this old grandpa off too easily? Mo Lien reached out and stroked her son's head. Just teach him a lesson. In the future, this old grandpa would probably take a detour whenever he saw Mo Bao Bao. At night, Mo Bao Bao tossed and turned on the bed, unable to fall asleep. He rolled and crawled up from the bamboo bed. Lord Guangguang, who was sleeping on the other side, rubbed his eyes and asked with a puzzled expression, Little dumpling, where are you planning to go in the middle of the night? Mother has personally become the master. She's busy every day. I have to help her. Lord Guangguang looked sleepy. Little dumpling, how are you going to help mother? Sigh, these lords who have ascended to the holy region are really too worrisome. They're all living their lives like salted fish. No wonder mother must train them in the middle of the day. Time is limited. If this continues, they might not be able to make any big breakthroughs even after 8 to 10 years. Little dumpling, aren't you worrying too much? Lord Guangguang opened his mouth. He really wanted to tell his little brother to go to sleep in the middle of the night. Don't bother yourself with these troublesome matters. Mo Bao Bao slapped his thigh and jumped onto the ground. I've decided. Decided what? Lord Guangguang had a bad premonition. He felt that whatever little dumpling decided, it wouldn't be anything good. Give these uncles and aunties more exercise. Lord Guangguang's sleepy eyes suddenly widened. Sen. You've been training very hard recently. Husband, I've added some hot water for you. Soak in it for a while longer. Alright, thank you, wife. In a newly built bamboo house, a man soaking in a bathtub answered with a chuckle. Ever since Master took over our holy region, why do I feel that our days are getting better day by day? Although our daily training is quite tiring, I feel that slowly, we can also live a full and warm life. The man sighed. I think Master is indeed having a hard time. Tian has sent people to supervise us. Speaking of which, we were a famous swordsman couple back in the underworld region. Who would have thought that after ascending to the sacred region a few years ago, I would actually become more and more unambitious? You're right to think that way. A cold voice suddenly appeared behind the couple's heads. The man in the bathtub turned his head to take a look and coincidentally saw a small head floating outside the bathtub. The child had a long ponytail and a jet-black jade seal inlaid on his forehead. At first glance, he looked like a freaking corpse. The man was so scared that his legs went soft and he sank into the bathtub. Caught off guard, he drank a mouthful of bathwater. Cough, 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 cough. The man's face turned red. The woman looked at the child floating out from behind the bathtub in surprise. The child was about 5 years old. Her small face was delicate and pretty. Her phoenix eyes were wide open as she glanced at the man who had just taken a sip of the bathwater. Does it taste good? The couple was speechless. Master has ordered that from today onwards, there will be an additional 4 hours of exercise every night. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, gather in front of Master's bamboo house. What? A strange look appeared on the couple's faces. Happy? I'm happy for your whole family. Chapter 5698. On the other side, a middle-aged Shouja was currently carrying his wife onto the bed with a sneaky smile. The female Shou gave him a flirtatious smile, reaching out her small hand to rub his collar. Wang Ji. Heh heh heh. Wang Ji hurriedly moved his mouth over, looking like they were about to kiss. A chilly laugh sounded beside the two people's ears. Heh heh heh. The middle-aged Shouja's body stiffened. A strange laugh suddenly came from his room in the dark night. The male and female's scalps instantly exploded. Holy shit! There's a ghost here. The two pairs of eyes looked over in terror, only to see a small child floating in the room, his black eyes staring at them. This time, the two Shouja's heart almost exploded. What's going on with their mentality collapsing in an instant? Could this child be a ghost child? The floating baby Mo looked at the two people's pale faces in confusion. Master has orders, starting from today, there will be an extra 4 hours of exercise every night. After 15 minutes, gather in front of Master's bamboo house. The middle-aged Shouja, I really have an impulse to beat this child to death. Less than an hour later, baby Mo floated all the way back to Bamboo Garden, asking with a puzzled expression, why does every one of them have a strange expression when they see me? What's that uncle doing at the end? Why did he throw a slipper at me? Guang Dren's mouth twitches, saying expressionlessly, you floated around every household in the middle of the night, it'd be strange if they liked you. Baby Mo curled his lips, forget it, I'm doing this for mother, I won't bicker about their attitudes. Guang Dren thought, if you don't bicker, others will bicker with you. Your bad habit of going out for a stroll in the middle of the night, it'd be good if you could change it. In the middle of the night, there were already many people gathered in front of the bamboo house. Everyone was holding all kinds of lighting equipment, illuminating the empty square in front of the bamboo house. Zhang Jing saw He Weiping and Co in the crowd, and hurriedly squeezed over, saying with a speechless expression, everyone, were you also woken up in the middle of the night? Thinking of the face floating outside the window, He Weiping could not help but slap his forehead. Young Master Mo is really too naughty. At that time, I was still bathing, and that child appeared behind me, floating out like a ghost. I fucking exploded on the spot. Isn't that so? This young Master Mo is too mischievous. Say, do you think we should report this matter to Master? Forget about the report. If Master gets angry out of humiliation, he might even double our exercise time. Big Brother Lu, what you said is extremely reasonable. Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, they heard a light and crisp cough coming from the front. Everyone looked up and couldn't help but twitch their mouths. She saw that young Master Mo Jr. was floating in from outside the bamboo garden. Under the boundless night sky, this fellow was like a little ghost, drifting without making a single sound. Hello everyone, since everyone is here, let's begin. This young Master Mo said in a childish voice. He then took out a jade talisman from his pocket. Everyone stared at him warily. Especially an old grandfather standing in the front row, his expression was especially nervous as he stared at baby Mo. This old grandfather was the Tsang Prefecture's Qi clan's elder who was miserably immobilized by his body-securing talisman during the day. At this moment, he finally knew how stupid he was during the day. It was only his first day in the sacred region, and he had already kicked an iron plate. Chapter 5699. Little young Master Mo, He Weiping, who was sitting in the front row, hurriedly called out, what are you doing? My child, let your uncle sleep, and stop playing. Uncle He, don't worry. The golems I released are for you to practice. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter if you break them. I'll make another batch. Everyone, something didn't sound right. But there was no time for them to think about it. Hundreds and thousands of muscular golems jumped out of the storage talisman and punched their bodies. In the middle of the night, the master turned over and pressed her entire body against her husband. Wifey. Mo Lien half opened his eyes and reached out to hug her slender waist. He nuzzled against her. Can't sleep? Do you want your husband to do something with you? Master's round eyes were very bright in the dark night. She lowered her voice and whispered in his ear, "Don't make a fuss. Listen outside. Is there any noise?" "There's no noise." Mo Lien pulled her down and was about to kiss her. Master covered his thin lips with one hand. Something has happened. With a whoosh, this fellow got up from his body, put on some clothes, and mindlessly tried to walk away. Mo Lien hurriedly got up and pulled her back. Wait. How could his beautiful wifey go out dressed like this? No way, no way. His wifey looked like a lazy kitten after waking up. No one else could see it except him. Listen, it's noisy outside. Master blinked and whispered to him, "Your son must be up to something again." Mo Lien suddenly smiled and lowered his head to kiss the little fellow. "Our son has gone astray. There's no hope for this. Let's work harder and have another child to educate." His master punched him in the head. "You think you can do that? You can't even teach one child well." Mo Lien's distinct phoenix eyes blinked vigorously as he grumbled aggrievedly in his heart, "Is my wife disdaining hubby? Let me tell you, based on my intuition as a mother, something must have happened outside." The little stoic punched her husband. "Hurry up." Mo Lien was busy helping her tie the belt of her outer robe. Hearing her words, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. "You're so annoying. You can't even sleep well." Arbor sighed helplessly and nodded. "I told you that this child is very quiet when eating. Nothing good ever happens when you're quiet. I'm telling you, you must be ruthless today and give this little guy a good beating. Otherwise, he will definitely be able to do whatever he wants. Why don't you beat him up?" Mo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I have the image of a loving mother." The little stoic immediately shouted and pounded her fist on his chest. "It hurts, wifey, it hurts." Arbor hastily rubbed his chest and wrapped his arms around his neck. He whispered in his ear, "When we go out later, if our son is really up to no good, I'll call you 3. When I count to 3, you'll immediately rush up and beat him. Mo Lien, you do all the good things, but I do all the bad things. What kind of a baby did I marry?" Arbor glared at him. "Why aren't you saying anything? Did he copy too few quotations from the little emperor?" Mo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He nodded repeatedly and rubbed his head against her smooth forehead. "This husband will listen to you, listen to you." Chapter 5700. When the two of them pulled open the door while holding hands, they saw that it was as bright as day outside. Many luminous pearls hung around the plaza in front of the court's entrance. A large group of miserable Saint Domain cultivators were currently encircled in the center of the plaza, struggling against hundreds and thousands of golems. Venerable Peach Blossom, Duan Yu, and the others, who were also woken up, were already standing outside the court. When they heard the door opening, they turned to take a look. They saw the little stoic expressionlessly walking down the stairs. Her eyes darted around before her gaze shifted to her son, who was hanging motionlessly in the middle of the plaza like a small jade sculpture. Feng Changqing and the others exasperatedly looked at each other. What happened? Zhou's Lien. Mo Lien's mouth twitched, and he couldn't resist coughing softly. Everyone looked at the two of them in confusion, only to see Zhou suddenly shout, 1, 2, 3. Mo Lien, that guy flew over with a whoosh. Everyone couldn't help but find it a little funny. Mo Lien, that guy, no matter how they looked at it, was hilarious. He pounced to Baby Mo's side and picked him up in his arms. Baby Mo, who was originally resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes to glance at his father and asked curiously, "Daddy, why did you come? Mo Lien curled his lips at his son with a spurious smile. Why don't you guess why your dad came? Baby Mo immediately put on a vigilant expression when he saw his dad's appearance. Daddy, you didn't come to hit me, right? You guessed correctly. Mo Lien smiled faintly and raised his hand to slap his son's butt. Baby Mo immediately kicked his legs and wailed. When Sir Guangguang saw this, he hastily pounced over to rescue Mo Lien. He hung onto his father's arm and bared his white teeth, wanting to bite him. Who told you not to sleep in the middle of the night and to cause trouble all day long? What did you release these golems for? Can't you let these uncles have a good night's sleep? When Mo Lien raised her hand to hit her son, the sacred domain practitioners who were fighting against the mechanical puppets were so touched that they wanted to cry. Their savior had finally arrived. Their master had finally brought her husband to save them. Baby Mo cried out, Mother, Godfather. It's useless to call them Grandpa and Grandma. Mo Lien kept a straight face, trying to maintain the image of a strict father. As a loving mother, Jojo immediately trotted over and took her son from her husband's arms. She raised her hand and knocked on his forehead. Son, what did you do this time? Look at how angry your father is. How could you anger your father like this? Unfilial son. Mo Lien scolded. The corners of Duan Yu and Venerable Peach Blossom Divinity's mouths couldn't help twitching. This was too fucking fake. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that it was Sir Qiao Qiao who instigated Mo Lien to hit his son. At this moment, he still had to play the role of a good guy to comfort his son's hurt little heart. Mother, woo-woo, father hit me. He hit baby Mo's butt in front of so many people. How infuriating. Was baby Mo shameless? Baby Mo could get angry too. Father is a bad guy. Arbor nodded, hugging his son and patting him lightly. Son, you're too naughty. What are you doing in the middle of the night instead of sleeping? Mother, I saw that you've been training these uncles too hard, so I wanted to help you. Arbor was still acting, but when he heard this, he couldn't help but stare blankly. Looking down at his son's big, watery eyes, he couldn't help but smile. Kissing his son, Arbor smiled and said, My son has grown up, and actually knows how to help mother share her burden. Chapter 5701. Although your intentions are very good for mother, you can't just gather all these pitiful uncles and aunts in the sanctuary in the middle of the night. They can get angry too. Did you sneak into someone's house in the middle of the night? What if you meet someone with a bad temper and they beat you up the moment they come? What you're doing is disturbing their peaceful and beautiful dreams. Naturally, it's wrong. If we want to train them, we have to find the right time to inform them. We just have to inform them publicly. Don't you agree? Baby Mo nodded repeatedly. Then I won't disturb these uncles and aunts in the future. Previously, there was an uncle who crawled out of bed and screamed at me in terror. He even threw a slipper at me. I don't know what's going on either. That uncle was so angry. Everyone, Divine Peach Blossom laughed so hard that he almost spat out a mouthful of tea. Damn, this child must have disturbed the wonderful occasion of the celestial being. The corners of Mo Lien's mouth twitched. His hands itched to hit his son again. But now that his wife was hugging his son, he couldn't go up and hit him. Son, hurry and put away all these golems. Who would be able to stand this? They had to train day and night. They had to give them time to rest. Baby Mo nodded sensibly. With a wave of his hand, he put away the hundreds and thousands of golems he released into the storage talisman. The sounds of fighting on the field finally came to a stop. The exhausted sanctuary cultivators turned around and cupped their hands in thanks to Mo Lien, Arbor, and the others. Thank you for saving us, Master. Thank you, Master. Thank you. After Arbor dispersed the crowd, he hugged his son and yawned. Son, you can't cause trouble in the future, okay? Baby Mo nodded his little head and burrowed into his mother's arms. Mother, should I go and apologize to them? Don't. Everyone spoke up to stop him. If this slow-witted child were to sneak into every household in the middle of the night and use the glorified excuse of apologizing, the sanctuary cultivators would probably really go crazy. Those uncles and aunties won't really care about a child like you. But what about you? You have to strictly recognize your own mistakes. You can't do this again. If someone didn't invite you, you can't just barge into someone else's house, understand? Oh. Baby Mo nodded and hugged his mother as he asked, Mother, can little dumpling sleep with mother today? His father immediately tried to pull him back. No. You're almost 6 years old after the new year. You're no longer a 2 or 3-year-old child. You have to sleep independently. Everyone looked at him with disdain. Arbor ignored her husband and nodded with her son in her arms. Okay, son. Let's sleep together tonight. We'll get up early tomorrow. Baby Mo nodded and hugged her mother's neck happily, looking very happy. His father, on the other hand, was not so happy. He kept shooting glances at Venerable Peach Blossom, who was beside him. Venerable Peach Blossom, God, why should I help you carry your son away? Haha, you can happily scram with Jojo, but I still have to look after your son for you. Bah! It's getting late. Let's go, let's go. Venerable Peach Blossom pulled Duan Yu and left with a flick of his sleeves. I'm so sleepy. He ignored Mo Lian's gloomy glare at them from behind. Chapter 5702. On the second day, Baby Mo woke up on the small soft bed beside them. The little fellow was lying on his stomach in a soft and fluffy blanket. He arched his small body and poked his head out from under the blanket. He rubbed his large eyes and turned his head to look at the two people in the bed. Only then did he realize that in the middle of the night, he was actually carried to the soft bed by his heartless father to sleep. The little fellow was so angry that he jumped up like a carp and climbed onto the big bed barefooted. Father, this heartless and bad fellow, every time he moved Baby Mo around like a toy, he even despised him for being a hindrance. He climbed onto the bed and kicked his father's leg with his small feet. His movements were abnormally nimble as he climbed onto the big bed in a few steps and flipped over his father's body. Mo Lian had long woken up and couldn't help but laugh when she heard the commotion. She scooped the little fellow into her embrace and pinched his small face. What are you doing so early in the morning? Let mommy sleep for a while more. Baby Mo huffed, I don't want you, I want mommy. This tone, why did it sound so much like, I don't want you, I want the benefactress? Hearing that, Mo Lian frowned and lightly knocked on his head. You're not allowed to imitate your big brother's words. Humph, Baby Mo huffed and stretched out his small hand. I want mommy, I want mommy. Arbor was woken up by the father and son. She opened her pair of beautiful eyes and stared at the two for a while. Her small fist landed on Mo Lian's head. What's the fuss about? Baby Mo laughed out loud. He stuck out his small butt and rolled into Jojo's embrace and hugged her neck. Mommy, mommy, quickly wake up, quickly wake up. Let's go cultivate. Why was he cultivating again? Arbor instantly felt that this son of hers was simply like a cultivation maniac. Such a small person like him, this level of cultivation was already sufficient. There was really no need for him to work so hard. Today's weather is so good, why don't we go out for a patrol? Recently, the holy region had been reclaiming land everywhere. With some holy water and holy soil to cultivate, it shouldn't be long before the entire holy region's wasteland could be reclaimed. As long as they could grow crops, the lives of the people in the sanctuary would definitely improve. They had suffered too much. After being tormented for so many years, how could they still be as high-spirited as when they were in the 3 provinces? They were all old masters or ancestors of the aristocratic families of the 6 prefectures and 3 prefectures. All of them were so miserable. Okay. Baby Mo was very happy when he heard that he didn't need to go to school. It was great to be able to walk around. Baby Mo was very happy. Especially being able to go out for a stroll with father and mother would be even better. The family of 3 washed up and went out. Arbor took out a carriage that hadn't been used in the star field for a long time and jumped in with his son. Mo Lien was dumbfounded. I drive the carriage. Of course. Mo Bao Bao waved his fist fiercely. Don't tell me you want me to drive the carriage with my tiny body. Or do you want mother to tire herself out? Mo Lien, Arbor couldn't help but laugh. He hugged his son and kissed him. Let's go out for a walk for half a day. At noon, let your Uncle Peach Blossom and foster father cook delicious food at home. We'll be able to eat once we get home. Yay! Mo Lien pursed her lips. What else could she do? Whatever the little emperor said was the truth. She jumped into the carriage and became the coachman for her son and daughter-in-law. They drove the carriage all the way to the outskirts of the eastern region. Baby Mo happily hummed a little tune as he hugged his mother and said, "Mother, mother, quick, look at father." Chapter 5703. His father had a hard life and was driving a carriage outside. When he saw his son lift the curtain and look over, he couldn't help but glance back. What are you looking at? When you have a son in the future, this daddy will have a grandson. You go outside to drive the carriage, and I'll sit in the carriage with my grandson and enjoy life with your mother. Arbor's mouth twitched, and he couldn't resist laughing. Unexpectedly, Baby Mo looked regretful. I think I'm going to be single for the rest of my life like adoptive father. Mo Lien was taken aback and couldn't resist asking, why? There's no one else like my mother in this world. How can I still have a wife? Baby Mo angrily slammed down the curtain and left his father outside. Mo Lien's mouth kept twitching, and she inexplicably felt like she asked a strange question. But her son's answer was also extremely smooth. Indeed, there was no other Qiao Qiao in this world. So how fortunate was he to meet her at the first moment, and also to tightly grasp her at the first moment, never letting go again. The family of 3 strolled around the eastern domain and strolled around. According to Master's instructions, the signboards had already been erected, and a simple bamboo fence had also been built in the periphery of the eastern domain. 1 or 2 green sprouts seemed to have sprouted on a piece of barren land. They were bright green and looked somewhat joyous. The children of cultivators who originally had nothing to do and didn't cultivate were now busy working in the fields. There was a small group of people sitting together roasting sweet potatoes on the side, and a faint fragrance drifted over. Compared to the barren holy domain when they first arrived, it finally had a bit more human flavor. Now, all the cultivators in the holy domain praised their master for being wise and mighty. After training the cultivators' physical strength and assigning them to farm, when the crops in the fields grew, no one would think of risking their lives to break out of this prison in order to send their children out of this prison. I'll have a chat with heavenly law later. If the holy domain isn't suitable for those young children to develop, why not send them to the 3 provinces in batches to train? The little stoic muttered to herself as she hugged her son. Rather than detaining those children of transcendent God realm cultivators here, it was better to send them to the lower realm to train. Although he might have to experience the fickleness of human relationships for a few decades, his parents and children would have to be separated temporarily. But how could one become strong without experience? In the end, under the skies of the sanctuary, one would only be able to retire. The environment of the sacred region was too monotonous, and not suitable for the development of young people. Mother, does that mean we can't go back either? How could that be? The little stoic pursed her lips. Heavenly law won't let us go home, so we'll find Master and Aunt Master to chat with it. Right, let's have a good chat. Baby Mo's eyes suddenly lit up. Grandpa Heavenly Tao is too stubborn. If you don't talk to him, he won't know why the flowers are so red." The little stoic roared with laughter. Mo Lien was driving the car outside. When he heard the laughter of his wife and children coming from the car, he couldn't help but feel his heart itch. He hopped into the house and hugged his wife and son. "It's almost noon. Let's go home for lunch." "Who's driving the carriage outside?" Arbor asked in amusement. "Oh, my beautiful and gentle little master, it is Debeo who is serving you." Arbor giggled and reached out to hug Mo Lien. "You're the only one who knows how to assign people. Was it human?" Mo Lien smiled with a gentle gaze. The carriage headed for the bamboo building. From afar, they could see smoke curling up from the small building. Duan Yu pushed open the small courtyard's bamboo door and walked out, waving at them. Baby Mo hastily hopped off the carriage and ran toward him while cheering. Mo Lien and Arbor held hands as they walked toward the bamboo building with light steps. They met each other's eyes and smiled faintly. Like the resplendent sunlight, everything was just perfect. Chapter 5704. I'm back. GMO carried 2 large plastic bags, kicked off her shoes and walked in from the entrance. Sister. Baoyu's younger brother suddenly jumped over and quickly reached out to take the plastic bags in her hand. You went to the supermarket? GMO carried a pile of ice cream to the refrigerator and stacked boxes in the freezer. When I passed by, I saw the supermarket having a promotion. Thinking of this, I bought more back. You bought so much milk. Yes. GMO took out 2 white t-shirts from the plastic bag and threw one to Baoyu's brother. Buy a box of milk and get a t-shirt. So I bought 3 boxes. It should be enough to drink for a while. They said there's going to be a heavy rain today. Remember to lock the doors and windows before going to bed, okay? Got it, sister. GMO yawned and glanced at her brother. If there's nothing else, wash up and go to bed. Sister, wait a moment. Baoyu's brother ran over with his laptop and pulled her to sit on the sofa with a smile. I took a small task for you to make money. You're free these days, do you want to give it a try? GMO took his laptop and flipped through the employer's information. A picture of a young man popped up on the screen. It seemed to have a background of the Republic of China. The man had a pair of charming peach blossom eyes. He wore a pair of white gloves on his hands and wore a black riding suit. He held a whip in his hand and stood upright at the window, looking out of the window. The side of his face was flawless. He was a charming demon. GMO yawned again, looking sleepy. Who is this? The nightclub's little prince. After saying this, GMO found that her brother's mouth was wide open in surprise. Sister, you really don't know him? This is Qin Yun, the popular actor who is known by everyone from the age of 3 to the age of 80. GMO shook her head. I'm not familiar with him. Baoyu's brother nodded and thought, sure enough, it's not suitable to talk about this topic with the elderly. Sister, don't worry about it. You just need to remember that we took a deposit of 300,000 yuan from him and guaranteed his safety for 2 months. Okay. GMO raised her hand and patted her brother's shoulder, rubbed her eyes and said, then I'll go to bed first. When will your task start? 3 days later, sis. Oh. Then she would report to Film Emperor Qin 3 days later. Sister Ran, that long-winded agent of his is hard to deal with. You should give him a call before you go. GMO waved his hand, indicating that he understood. Not long after, GMO came out of the shower and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window to look at the night sky outside. It was pitch black, with only the faint light from the street lamps. She reached out to lock the window and draw the curtains. Then, she returned to the bed and rolled onto it. She burrowed her head under the blanket and looked at her watch, 11:45. A wave of sleepiness hit him. While he was in a daze, he kept hearing the sound of the window vibrating. There seemed to be a strong wind outside. Between the gaps in the glass, there were some whistling sounds from the wind. Boom! A strong gust of wind had clearly shattered the window, but GMO seemed to be stuck in a nightmare, unable to open his eyes. Two balls of light that looked like blazing suns wrapped around a circular object and a moon-shaped object. With a whoosh, they entered her glabella. In the blink of an eye, GMO's eyes widened in horror and she suddenly stood up. No matter how far she drifted in the silent and boundless void, no matter how much time she wasted, the sleeping beast would finally open its eyes. Chapter 5705. Spring afternoons were a good time to be drowsy. Longevity Hall Jojo was wearing a little white dress, lying on an open book of poison. Her head was already tilted on the pillow, and she looked like she was fast asleep. Master, Master Master. Master Jojo opened her eyes with a hazy expression. She sat up straight and wiped the saliva that had dripped onto the book. I fell asleep again. Master, you've been falling asleep all the time recently. You can fall asleep while sitting and reading, and you'll mysteriously fall asleep while eating. Chocho said worriedly, Master, could it be that you're suffering from premature aging? You're the premature one, your whole family is premature. She was only 7 years old. Even if she was premature, she wouldn't have aged that long, right? Master Jojo sat up straight and put her two little hands on her knees. Maybe it's because I've been too bored recently. I won't be bored if I draw some talismans. She took out a golden book that was half as tall as her body from her conscious. The little girl flipped through the pages, took out a gold-beaded talisman pen, and took out a jade talisman to engrave. Chocho, have the leaves grown out recently? Not yet, Master. I see that the top of your tree is bare. It doesn't look good. That's because you made me bald, Master. Master Jojo was silent. If Chocho could turn into a tray ant at this moment, she would definitely roll her eyes at her. Don't think that you can erase your previous inhumane and deranged actions just because you're silent. Master Jojo concentrated on drawing a complicated summoning talisman. Chocho suddenly said, Master, you're so familiar with drawing now. What if you forget in the future? How can I forget? Master Jojo held her gold-beaded talisman pen and touched the jade talisman in her hand. She said proudly, even if I forget anything, I won't forget to draw talismans. You're sleepy now, and your memory isn't good. What if you forget how to draw talismans in the future? Wouldn't that be a huge loss? Chocho continued. Master Silver, is Chocho right? Arbor pondered for a moment. Then I'll draw one for each type of talisman in advance and put it in the golden talisman jade tome. What do you think? Good, good, good. Master is still the smart one. Arbor took out a bunch of blank talismans and started to draw talismans seriously. His brush moved like a dragon, and he concentrated wholeheartedly, drawing a stack of various talismans in a short moment. Arbor reached out her hand, and the golden talisman jade tome turned into several jade slips and flew into her hand. Master, Master, what are you inscribing on the golden talisman jade tome? This kind of profound grade flying celestial talisman can be activated without the need to draw in energy. However, drawing it is a little complicated. With the flying talisman in hand, flying is no longer a dream for ordinary people. Do you want to soar in the sky? Do you want a pair of invisible wings? Make a flying talisman. The sapling was speechless as it watched its master carve 2 lines of words on the golden talisman jade tome. She felt that Master Silver was a little cute sometimes many years after her rebirth. Arbor held the gold-beaded talisman pen and concentrated on learning how to draw the deity-inviting talisman. She smoothed out the demonstration talisman in her hand and sighed in her heart. This demonstration talisman was drawn really well. Speaking of which, who was so considerate to draw her a demonstration talisman for every type of new talisman he learned. She held the one she drew and compared it with the demonstration talisman. Arbor sighed. Senior's drawing of the deity inviting talisman is obviously much more mature than mine. She still needed to work harder. Chapter 5706. Dressed in black armor, the youth stepped on the remains of the zombies on the ground as he walked up the hill and gazed into the distance. What he saw was a scene of desolation. There were withered branches and withered leaves, and there wasn't a hint of green in his eyes. The royal guards behind him tacitly dispersed and searched around. Your Highness. Huifeng used a branch to stir the fire that hadn't been completely extinguished. He said with an exhausted expression, zombies probably suddenly attacked this camp. The survivors probably all ran away. Mo Lien was silent and looked up at the faint crescent moon. Let's go take a look. Yes. Huifeng and the others cupped their fists in response and followed the youth into the depths of the hill to search. Aside from corpses, all they saw along the way were moving zombies. After searching for most of the night, both men and horses were exhausted. Mo Lien turned around and glanced at them. Set up camp and rest. Your Highness. Huifeng stirred a clump of withered branches and gazed at the slowly burning fire. If this chaotic world ends, what would your Highness want to do the most? Mo Lien's eyes flickered. It's been a long time since I've seen the colors of red flowers and green willows. This gloomy world truly caused despair to rise in people's hearts. It was as if everything in front of them was devoid of life and they couldn't see a trace of hope. The world was like an old, modeled painting that had lost all of its original colors. It was so shabby that it instilled fear in people. If this dull and tedious life of fighting could end, he was willing to find a small garden and unload all his burdens. He could raise flowers and plants and live a carefree life. Seeing that Her Highness didn't give a complete answer, Huifeng didn't intend to continue asking. Instead, he said with a smile, if this chaotic world can end one day, this subordinate wants to go to the countryside to farm and raise chickens. Chickens? A half-asleep royal guard couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment, heh, chickens are good, good. Raise more and you can kill them to eat in the future. I haven't tasted chicken soup, in a long time. Huifeng wanted to go up and beat this stinking brat, but Mo Lien reached out to stop him. Rest early. We'll search the vicinity tomorrow morning. If we can't find anyone alive, we'll return to the capital first. Yes. They're Mo Kingdom soldiers, don't make a sound. Fan Chioha covered Sister Ji's mouth with his hand and shook his head at her. These soldiers should be searching for supplies nearby. We can't go out. Our supplies won't last much longer. If they take all of it, the consequences will be unimaginable. But Jojo, Sis Gu turned around worriedly and glanced at the unconscious Arbor. Last night, the zombies attacked our camp. Jojo fought too much and was exhausted. He'll be fine after a few days of rest. Don't worry. What we need to do now is to avoid these soldiers and get Jojo out of here. They seem to be leaving. Sis Gu lay in the bushes and watched as a tall young man walked down the hill. This young man was very handsome and tall. Even though he was covered in dust, his black robe seemed to have been smeared with dirt. But as he stood there, it was as if thousands of stars could not obscure his brilliance. Are we really? Before Sis Gu could finish speaking, Fan Chioha covered her mouth again. Mo Lien seemed to have sensed something, and he turned his head to look at the thicket overgrown with brambles in the distance. Return to the capital. He strode forward on his horse and lightly patted it. Then, he turned around and led everyone down the dirt path on the hillside at lightning speed. When Arbor slowly woke up, his heart suddenly felt empty, as if he had lost something. Chapter 5707. You actually didn't say a word and disappeared without a trace. Duan Yu's sword was swift and ruthless, each strike aimed at his body. The latter remained silent and only drew his sword to parry. He didn't retaliate even after several dozen moves. Do you know that someone has always been thinking about you, and worrying about you at all times? Mo Lien pursed her lips and parried his sword. Her figure flashed, and her ink-colored clothes fluttered in the night sky as she leaped towards the eaves. Duan Yu swiftly chased after her to the top of the high wall and leaped down in pursuit. Two figures, one black and one white, slender as bamboo, streaked across the faint moonlight and landed on the treetops. They leaped to the front of the pavilion, leaving behind two faint afterimages. The sound of sword chi collided with the sound of wind. Two streaks of white light suddenly landed outside the wall, breaking countless trees. This sword duel lasted for a full hour. The moonlight gradually deepened, and even the faint chirping of cicadas and insects gradually quieted down. The two people silently laid on the roof for a long time without speaking. From this angle, one could only see a crescent moon hanging halfway above the branches. The long window was slightly open, and the faint moonlight shone on the little stoic's face. She was drowsily sleeping under a thin blanket. She was completely unaware that these two people had just broken the roof and fiercely fought. She hasn't been eating or sleeping well these days. Duan Yu raised his hand above his head and easily caught the wine jug that Mo Lien threw at him. We made such a big commotion, but she didn't even wake up. You should know how tired she was these days. Thank you, Mo Lien said solemnly. Duan Yu glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and poured the wine jug into his mouth. Do I look like someone who would thank you? These days, it's all thanks to you supporting and taking care of Jojo by her side. A toast to you. Mo Lien raised the wine jug in front of him. Duan Yu glanced at him again and made him hold it up for a long time before reluctantly clinking the wine jug with him. There's no need for thanks between you and me. That's true. Mo Lien nodded lightly. There are many things that just need to be remembered. Duan Yu covered his forehead with one hand and gazed at the moonlight faintly falling on the branches through the gaps between his fingers. Mo Lien, I'm sorry. Sometimes, a terrifying thought would appear in his mind. For example, how good would it be if Mo Lien didn't come back? Another example, perhaps Mo Lien really died in the sacrificial sea abyss? The legendary abyss of the sacrificial sea, no one could climb out of it, right? Perhaps, time could wash away all the memories. As long as he had enough patience to stay by Jojo's side, cry with her, laugh with her, watch the mountains and seas with her, watch the moon and the stars with her, maybe there would come a day when she would forget that person. She would see how hard he was trying to get closer. Thousands of words, thousands of threads. In the end, they only merged into one sentence, you fierce girl, who would like you? Only Mo Lien, that fool, would be infatuated with you. Lies. I also like you. I also want to pluck the stars and moon for you, pluck the sun, moon, and the universe. Mo Lien. Duan Yu covered his peach blossom eyes with his fingers and said softly, sometimes, I wonder if a step late is a lifetime late. Time is not in our control. Don't move. What's your name? Duan Yu. I'm a good person. You don't look like one. The bright moonlight reflected on his slightly moist eyes. Chapter 5708. Failure, failure, failure. Recently, I've heard these two words too many times. I hope that the operations team can give this lord a satisfactory answer. Why did it fail to this extent? Operations team, intelligence team, did these three departments cooperate well, did they? The long table was slammed loudly. Patriarch Black Gold's face was dark as water, and his sharp gaze swept over everyone present. Vice Hall Master Ghost, who had an angel halo above his head and a deathly expression, stammered, Boss, please calm down. Shut up. Patriarch Black Gold shouted angrily, you've already been dead for so many days, you don't have the freaking right to speak here. Vice Hall Master Ghost whimpered and shrank back behind team leader Qin Hong. Speak. Patriarch Black Gold pointed at Qin Hong, who had shrunk his neck and lowered his head, and scolded, as the overall team leader of the entire operation team, did you play a coordinating role? Did you truly take this matter to heart? I did, boss. Qin Hong opened his mouth to speak. But Patriarch Black Gold angrily retorted, you have a fart. Young Master Omega Kotoko leisurely sipped his tea. Boss, please pay attention to your words. Our scribe doesn't know how to continue with what you just said. Fifth Young Master Qin held a golden fountain pen and blankly looked up at Patriarch Black Gold. Should I record the words you have a fart in writing? Patriarch Black Gold angrily slammed the table. Look at what you've done previously. We went to Devastating Island to discuss business, but we couldn't reach an agreement. They blew up the entire island, killing all the elites we nurtured. Is this how you discuss business? Can't you speak properly? Must you use this kind of extreme method? Later, Vice Team Leader Ghost went to Yen City and actually got into a fight with Zhangzhou Company's boss. Can't you freaking be a bit more modest and cautious? Must you use this kind of violent method to discuss business? You're trying to destroy our entire Heavenly Fortune Company. But boss, didn't you say before that if the conciliatory policy doesn't work, we'll take forceful measures? The planes and cannons were already set up, yet you say we're wrong. What? Everything is up to you, boss. Why do you need us, the operations team, and the intelligence team to do anything? Shut up. Ancestor Black Gold angrily shouted as he slammed the table, look at you, look at you. He pointed at the dozen or so department elites and junior leaders present, panting heavily as he shouted angrily, what's the point of the company paying you? Tell me, which of the tasks assigned to you by the company can you do well? Speak, speak. Eldest Young Master Qin leisurely raised his wrist to look at his watch, which was a limited edition of only one in the world. He drank a mouthful of coffee with a grin before standing up and saying, Boss, it's 5:00. Let's get off work. Everyone was speechless. Old Ancestor He Jin was so angry that he slammed the table when he saw the elites of the department stand up one after another. No one knew if it was because he had smashed it multiple times, but the entire long desk collapsed with a loud bang. Everyone stood up with a dumbfounded expression and looked at the collapsed desk. Old Ancestor Black Gold angrily said, who bought this broken table? What about General Affairs? Ask the General Affairs Manager to come over. Boss, General Manager Mu is on annual leave today. Tell her to get her ass over here tomorrow. BOSS. Quick, quick, call an ambulance. Boss fainted from anger. Chapter 5709. In the bright and clean Angel No. 1 hospital. Wearing a blue-striped hospital gown, Patriarch Black Gold leaned against the headboard of the hospital bed with a gloomy face and flipped through a stack of invoices in his hand. Boss, you saw it. Supervisor Mu used her power for personal gain and purchased a batch of inferior tables and chairs. The evidence is conclusive. Take a look for yourself. Luo Qizhong's chubby face was smiling like a blooming flower, but his small eyes kept flashing with excitement. The long table in the conference room was broken by Patriarch Black Gold. Luo Qizhong was laughing like crazy. He had long disliked Mu Qinya, the General Affairs Department's woman. She was a woman in her 30s. Instead of staying at home to help her husband and children, she had to come out and argue with men. It was inexplicable. The point was that Mu Qinya was even more influential than him when it came to the two mini-bosses. He was the supervisor of the purchasing department, but Mu Qinya had no sense of propriety and had to steal his job. Wasn't she trying to make money out of it? The heavens were really opening their eyes. Was there any other opportunity that could be better than this one? Mu Qingya's table was broken by Patriarch Black Gold. What did this mean? It meant that this woman was seriously embezzling money. She bought a table worth 10,000 yuan, but it wasn't even worth 300 yuan. Luo Qizhong took the opportunity to complain about Mu Qingya. A few days ago, Patriarch Black Gold didn't like him and threw him to Qin Hong, the leader of the operation team. Luo Qizhong had been suppressing his anger for a long time. Today, he planned to take revenge on Mu Qingya. A few steps away, Luo Qizhong couldn't help but be overjoyed when he saw the angry expression on Patriarch Black Gold's face. General Affairs Department's Mu Qingya, this woman is dead meat today. Knock, knock, knock. Mu Qingya walked into the ward in a tailored black business suit and a pair of pointy high heels. She bowed 90 degrees. Hello, boss. Patriarch Black Gold stared at her with a gloomy face. I'm warning you to embezzle money. What do you have to say? Don't think that I don't know what you've done behind my back. Mu Qingya, do you want to go to jail or make up for your embezzlement and resign? I'll let you choose. Luo Qizhong was elated. Oh my God, his boss was so mighty today. He actually got rid of Mu Qingya, this malignant tumor, in one breath. It couldn't be any better. Mu Qingya panicked. She gritted her teeth and said, Boss, let me explain. Anything I buy, there are invoices to prove it. Luo Qizhong quickly interrupted, Don't give me that. Don't think that we don't know. Isn't it too easy for your general affairs team to forge some fake invoices? Mu Qingya sneered. Then do you have evidence that I've pocketed it? The 10,000 yuan table is the evidence. Mu Qingya gritted her teeth. I need to discuss this with the two bosses. Boss, you can make the decision. Luo Qizhong slammed the table and shouted, Are you the leader or is the boss the leader? How can you be so evasive? In any case, you must hand in your resignation today. Mu Qingya was depressed. Luo Qizhong. You'd better shut up now. I'm not saying that I won't solve the problem, but I need to ask the two bosses first. Luo Qizhong bit his handkerchief. Boss, look, she's using the two bosses to pressure you. She doesn't care about you at all. At this moment, the door of the ward was pushed open again. Bring it in. Young Master Omega Kotoku waved his hand and had two subordinates move the broken table in. Chapter 57:10. Xiao Qiao, stay with me forever, okay? Once you enter the abysmal underground palace, you will never be able to walk out. This leads to the netherworld, to the shattered void. Stay with me, let's stay together in the void, forever, okay? I felt that I had finally caught her. I had finally caught the girl that I had longed for my entire life. I had finally caught her. I would never let go again, however, in the next second, in the blink of an eye. I suddenly realized that the entire world seemed to have changed. I was left alone again. I hurriedly and miserably fell into the entrance of the 9 Nether Underground Palace. No! I screamed Xiao Qiao with all my might. I wanted to reach out and grab the figure that was getting further and further away from me. I wanted to grab her so badly. However, I couldn't. As always, I couldn't grab her. My body was suddenly pressed down by something. Before I could react, I was pressed down by that thing and fell into the entrance of the abysmal underground palace. I panicked and wanted to counterattack. I rushed to the mountain wall, and was surprised to find that I was in a trance. That damned entrance of the underground palace was completely sealed. Yes, it was closed. It was closed. There was no more light shining in. There was no more light. My Xiao Qiao was gone. She was far away from me. I couldn't catch her anymore. It shouldn't be like this. Why did I end up in such a terrible state? I used all my strength to smash at the permanently sealed entrance to the cave, using up almost all of my strength. A faint voice suddenly sounded in my ears. It's useless. You said yourself that it's useless. Once you enter the abysmal underground palace, you will never be able to walk out, the voice said calmly. Didn't you say it yourself? This leads to the netherworld, to the shattered void. We have no way back. The way back has already been sealed. Second young master, I will accompany you. I will accompany you in the vast and silent void. I will be with you forever. You must be happy. When I heard this voice, I couldn't help but shiver. I took a few steps back hesitantly and turned around. I saw her at first glance. That woman who has always been invisible in my eyes. This young lady in her 20s didn't look very pretty, but when her facial features were put together, she had a kind of attractive charm. This Miss Ran always seemed to have a different kind of charm and pride. But so what if she was charming? I still won't like her. Under such circumstances, I hated her even more. Why was she the one who appeared here? Why isn't Xiao Qiao here to accompany me? It's you. I gritted my teeth in anger. Did you fly over? Just now, at the entrance of the cave, it was this woman who pounced on me and suddenly fell on top of me. If not for that, I might have had a chance to turn back. I might have had a chance to catch Jojo. Second young master, don't you want to see die? She came against the light, her voice somewhat strange. Oh no, there was no light source here at all, it was pitch black here. If it weren't for my good eyesight, I wouldn't have noticed the strange expression on her face. Yes, it was extremely strange. It was like a hunting beast that suddenly saw a piece of meat in the forest. Her eyes stared at me quietly, making my hair stand on end. Chapter 57:11. Boss, what do you have to say for yourself? Hey Jean was lying on the bed, looking furious. Look at the people you've planted. Did you arrange for Mu Qingya, Supervisor Mu, to be promoted? Boss Omega Kotoku nodded. That's right. Bring the things up a little more. He waved his hand, and a few people threw the broken pieces of the table in front of Hey Jean. The things fell to the ground with a clatter. Hey Jean looked over with a gloomy expression. What do you mean by this? Why did you move these old tables and chairs here? Boss, don't you understand? You've been deceived. Boss Omega Kotoku said with certainty. This is the table that you broke with your own hands. I've already asked someone to identify it. It's been tampered with. The bottom of the table has been hollowed out. Otherwise, why do you think the table would break into pieces with just a few slaps? Hey Jean was confused. Do you mean that someone wants to use me to get rid of Supervisor Mu? He glanced over at Luo Qizhong, who was standing at the side with a dazed expression. Could it be this person who did it? Mu Qingya pretended to wipe the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. It's okay for me to be wronged, but I really don't want to see you being kept in the dark by a villain. Boss Omega Kotoku nodded. Show me the evidence. A man walked out from behind Boss Omega Kotoku and placed a small tablet in front of Hey Jean. Hey Jean clicked on it. The video was of Luo Qizhong sneaking into the meeting room. What else do you have to say? Hey Jean was furious and yelled at Luo Qizhong. The latter was confused. How is this possible? This isn't me. Boss, this isn't me. You already brought a saw and shovel into the meeting room. You're the one who's causing trouble. No, it's not me. It's not. Boss, this must be someone from the company in Yen City who sent someone to frame me. I've been advocating for the acquisition of the Zhangzhou company in Yen City. This must be the work of a despicable person, deliberately making you hate me. Ah, what are you doing? Let go of me. Villain, I think you're the villain. Mu Qingya slapped a document on Luo Qizhong's face. Don't quibble. Your purpose is already clear. If it weren't for your own selfish motives, why would you do this kind of thing again and again? You just want to push me down because you're afraid that I'll block your path to wealth. It's not, boss. Please believe me, boss. He Jin waved his hand and got someone to bring Luo Qizhong out. He looked at Mr. Omega Kotoku and Mu Qingya and sighed. The children are all grown up and have their own ideas. All these years, I can't understand the behavior of you and your big brother. But I only hope for one thing, and that is to let our Sky Fortune Company continue to flourish and not let it walk down the path of ruin. Mr. Omega Kotoku nodded with a solemn expression and left the ward with Mu Qingya. As soon as Mu Qingya walked out of the ward, she asked in a low voice, "Boss, do you still want to continue working with the Zhangzhou Company?" Mr. Omega Kotoku nodded. The old generation's methods are no longer useful. There's no future without funds. If possible, I don't want to take this step. But who knew what the future would be like? There was no movement in the long corridor for a long time until Mr. Qin walked out of the dim light. He flipped through the proposal in his hand. Sigh, the old man probably didn't expect that Sky Fortune has already changed hands to Zhangzhou. Should we tell boss? Since it's already like this, forget it. If he told him now, the old man would be angered to death. Let him live for 2 more years. What a pity. Chapter 57:12. I felt a bone-chilling coldness and was momentarily speechless. I had never looked Xiao Qiran in the eye before and had long forgotten when and where I had first met her. It was this woman who had ruined my entire plan. Originally, I could have been together with Xiao Qiao. It was all this woman's fault. It was all her fault for pouncing at me at the crucial moment and throwing me into the 9 nether underground palace. Once I entered the void, I would be unable to return. I used all my strength to heavily punch the huge rock at the entrance. However, the strength disappeared like a clay ox entering the sea. Could it be that I would truly be unable to leave this pitch-black void in this lifetime? My heart was ice-cold and filled with hatred. Xiao Qiran actually walked over with a smile and tugged at my sleeve. "Second young master, let's go ahead and take a look. Although it's a vast expanse of emptiness, the stars here are like a sea of stars. It's also very beautiful to look at." Where were the stars? Where was the sea of stars? I turned my head to take a look. There was only a vast expanse of darkness in the void. There was no end in sight and no light in sight. Everything was hidden in this darkness. It was empty, just like the weeds spreading in my heart. This woman must be blind. Zhao Qiran said to me with a smile, "Young master, could it be that you can't see the blue waves of the sea of stars? But I can see it all. Look, I can imagine it as I wish. I can even feel the aura of the waves. Crazy, crazy, you're truly crazy." Suddenly I broke into a run, roaring as I ran and shouted into the endless darkness. "Let me out. Heavenly Tao, yes, Heavenly Tao definitely exists. No one could do anything, but Heavenly Tao definitely could let me out. Heavenly Tao. Heavenly Tao." Zhao Qiran couldn't help but laugh. "Don't think about it, second young master. Heavenly Tao won't be here. This is the boundless void. Other than the boundless void, there's nothing else." I suddenly lunged forward like a madman and grabbed Zhao Qiran's neck. "Kill her, kill this crazy woman who only knew how to giggle at me. Then think of a way to leave this place. I must leave. If I don't leave, how can I find my Xiao Qiao? Second young master." Zhao Qiran didn't seem to fear death. Although she found it difficult to breathe, she still opened her eyes and looked at me with a smile. "You have to consider this carefully. If you really kill me, you'll be the only one left in the vast void. Wouldn't that make you even more lonely and miserable?" I stared at her blankly, as if I was seeing this woman for the first time. I unconsciously let go and stared at her as I bent over and coughed several times. Zhao Qiran, I don't need you to accompany me. You'll find out in the future. Everyone needed someone to accompany them. No, otherwise, wouldn't it be too lonely? Zhao Qiran smiled. She raised her hand and gently took mine. Second young master, don't worry. Ran will always be with you. No matter how many years you have to spend in the void wasteland, Ran will always be with you. I don't want you to accompany me. I don't want you to accompany me, I muttered to myself as I looked around. I don't need you to accompany me, I walked in a daze, but there was only a dark void around me. Even if I walked, where could I go? Zhao Qiran had been following me silently, as though she would follow me wherever I went. Gradually, the days passed one by one. At first, I could still ask Zhao Qiran what day it was. But after dozens or hundreds of days, I didn't know what day it was anymore. Every time I looked back, Zhao Qiran would smile at me gently. I felt that Zhao Qiran was very happy here because she would smile at me every time she saw me. Her smile was indescribably happy. One day, I finally couldn't help but ask her, don't you feel bad? Why would I feel bad? Zhao Qiran looked at me strangely. I can stay by the person I like and walk slowly with him under the starry sky. Why would I feel bad? I feel that each day is very happy. I couldn't help but tremble. In this void, we have nothing. We can't open our inner worlds. We can't even change our clothes. No food, no water, but what does that matter? Zhao Qiran smiled gently at me. We don't feel hunger or fatigue in the void. Don't you think that's the biggest problem? Don't feel hunger or fatigue, walking around in this damned place day and night. Don't you think that's terrifying? Zhao Qiran shook her head. It's not terrifying at all, second young master. I'm the happiest to be with second young master. I stared at her dazedly for a long time. My lips trembled. I won't like you. It's fine, Zhao Qiran said softly. It's fine, second young master. We have a lot of time to spend together. I can wait, whether it's hundreds or thousands of years. I can keep waiting until you change your mind. Thinking of how I had to stay with Zhao Qiran for hundreds or thousands of years, I couldn't help but tremble. I felt like all my strength had been sucked out. I suddenly found that it was a bit terrifying to be entangled with love. How could a person entangle another person for hundreds or thousands of years without wavering? Wouldn't she feel tired? I tried every day to tear open this void and enter. I tried everything. I even wanted to self-destruct to leave this void. But it was too difficult, too difficult. It was very hard to self-destruct in the void. When Zhao Qiran discovered my intentions, she followed me closely. Wherever I went, she would keep an eye on me, vigilantly preventing me from self-destructing. I've been trying for a few hundred days. Then I got tired. I wasn't even happy to walk. I was like a pile of mud in the void. Sometimes, when I was in the mood, I would happily say to Zhao Qiran, I married Xiao Qiao in my previous life. Did you know? Xiao Qiao was very grateful to me when I saved her from the dungeon. Although she was weak to the point of being transparent, she would still be very nervous and sad when she found out I was injured. She would hold a pen in her mouth and copy scriptures for me all night to pray for me. When I saw her, she was always lying there quietly, waiting for me to come and touch her head. She was really pretty. I think I liked her a lot back then. But later, I didn't know if it was because of pride or loneliness, but I personally ruined everything. I didn't know how many times I repeated these words to Zhao Qiran. Every time, Zhao Qiran would lie on my lap and whisper to me, it's okay, you have me now. I will always be with you, forever. Forever. I couldn't help but shudder. Even the tip of my heart felt cold. I thought to myself, but I don't want you. No matter how much time has passed, I will never want you. I'm saying if time could really turn back, I would be willing to give up my life in exchange for 2 hours to be with my Qiao. Obsession, this is probably my destiny in this life. Chapter 57:13. When mother was buried, it rained continuously for more than 3 months. Today, the sky finally cleared up a bit. I followed the palace walls and slowly walked on the desolate and empty main road. There was always a different feeling in my heart. Father Emperor's madness was getting worse. Sometimes, when he had a headache, he would go crazy and smash things. In the past, when mother was lying there like a living corpse, he wasn't that crazy. But now I knew that everything was developing towards the worst situation. The situation in the capital was no longer stable. There were filthy things everywhere that were rotten but not yet dead. Sometimes, they wouldn't sleep in the middle of the night and would circle around the outer walls of the capital. No matter how many were shot to death, there would always be more. I also didn't know how long I could hold on. I was always worried about Father Emperor and Mother Empress on Seacombe Planet. I also thought about 12th Brother's weak shoulders and wondered if he could support the Mo Kingdom's rivers and mountains. But I could only think about it like this. I couldn't go back. Compared to the peaceful lower star domain, perhaps the future of the divine continent was even more terrifying. Your Highness, do you want to take a look at the 100-flower festival prepared by the Ministry of Rites? Zhao Tingdong moved over and asked me in a low voice. That's right, after the mourning period, these officials were actively preparing to choose a consort for me. The 100-flower festival, glorified as a gathering of marriageable women from each family and letting me choose. But I wasn't interested in it at all. I used the excuse of mourning for 3 years as an excuse, but those officials braved the death of my father emperor to admonish me. They cried and said that as long as the heir apparent didn't have an heir, the country would be in danger. I was really annoyed by these two-faced dogs. The zombies outside the city were causing chaos. They didn't think of countermeasures all day long, only thinking about these useless things. It wasn't like I was going to die, so what if I didn't have an heir? Sometimes, I really wish I could be as crazy as Imperial Father and chop up all these talkative officials one by one. During the 100-flower festival, I sat there with an abnormally cold gaze. I looked like a door god. Oh, it couldn't be an ice sculpture, right? Those women looked at me with timid expressions. When I glanced at them, I felt annoyed. 1, 2, 3, all of them were so pretentious and without any special characteristics. At this moment, 2 women came forward and bowed. Greetings, Your Highness. I know Chen Chaoji and General Zhong Li's daughter. Chen Baojia and Zhongli Jiwei. If nothing unexpected happened, these 2 women should be the concubines that the Ministry of Rites selected for me. What a joke. Since the Ministry of Rites has taken a fancy to these 2, then let those old men marry them. I lifted my head to look at them. Seeing the 2 of them pretending to be shy and cute, I couldn't help but feel resentful. It shouldn't be like this. I always felt that something was wrong in this life. It was wrong again and again, so wrong that I couldn't look straight at the future. I stared coldly at the 2 women who came forward to greet me, and suddenly flipped the table in front of me. A series of things fell to the ground. Forgiveness? Forgiveness for what? I strode away in a huff. The 100-flower festival ended on a bad note, and the news quickly spread throughout the court. Soon, the rumors spread throughout the capital. They said that His Highness the Crown Prince didn't like women and liked men. Was this talking about me? Imperial Father summoned me and reprimanded me in a fit of irritation. He punished me to kneel in the ancestral shrine. I knelt for 3 days and 3 nights without making a sound. In the end, he couldn't do anything about it. His head hurt, and when it hurt, he would hit his head against the wall. Goen screamed on the side. Even the most expensive incense couldn't stop his crazy actions. He was in pain, so he didn't care about me, and I also didn't care about him. Originally, the relationship between father and son was weak. Ever since mother passed away, we probably didn't even have the basic greetings between us. The Ministry of Rights began to talk among themselves and give me women. How laughable. Did they think that by doing this, I would be obedient? I simply built a court for the women that were given to me. The court was called, Destined to Live Alone. These women were sent here willingly. They should have understood from the first day that they were sent here what destined to live alone meant. Since they were willing, I couldn't be bothered to care. If they dared to coincidentally meet me in the garden, I would kill one or two of them. After a long time, everyone should understand. Don't coincidentally meet me. I can only be someone they look up to. Later, even the Ministry of Rights was disheartened and stopped sending me all kinds of beauties on their own initiative. They accepted their fate. And they laughably believed those rumors, think that their unattainable crown prince of Shenzhou was a homosexual. Cut off your sister's sleeve. Since these people were so stupid, he would just let them be. After the new year, Zhangzhou's Emperor Rongli came to visit. Imperial father handed over all state affairs to me. He was drunk in the palace all day long. His hair wasn't thin, and sometimes he didn't wear clothes. He just sat there like an idiot for 3 days and 2 nights. After I finished discussing with Zhangzhou's emperor, we decided to join hands and go to the place where zombies were rampant. We, who were trapped in the capital, had no way out. If we fought, we might have a chance to survive. If we retreated, there was no way out. 1 month later, the news of me eloping with Zhangzhou's emperor spread all over the 3 states. It was very strange. That day, when Rongli and I were riding on the Pingjin prairie, he suddenly stopped. He suddenly stopped and pointed to the distant sky where the clouds of fire were connected. Look there. I followed his gaze. It was bright red. At first glance, it looked like the mountain fire had blown red. The red was abnormally dazzling. There's nothing. I picked up the wine pot hanging casually and took a sip. What did you see? I think I saw a woman standing there and waving at us. I find her expressionless face somewhat familiar. I couldn't help but laugh. I teased, "You miss your wife?" "No." Rongli shook his head. I suddenly understood. I raised my hand and threw the wine pot at him. "No wonder. Everyone thought that I had eloped with you. Why didn't you, an old bachelor, marry someone? Why didn't you marry her?" "How would I know?" I felt a little uncomfortable. I wanted to suppress the anger in my heart forever. I whipped my horse and galloped forward. If we win this time, we can stay on the prairie for the rest of our lives. Then, I spurred my horse far away. I didn't hear Rongli mutter, "What if we lose?" Chapter 57:14. The war in the grassland of Pingjin lasted for half a year. In the end, the grassland was filled with withered bones and weeds. The entire grassland was covered in wounds. Our allied forces won the war in a Pyrrhic victory. The corpse puppet army was exterminated by us, but the remaining soldiers didn't seem to fare any better. Rongli's illness was getting worse. Sometimes, he would lie in bed for 3 days and 2 nights. He rarely woke up. That day, when I went to visit him, he woke up groggily and glanced at me. His originally handsome face now looked skinny and out of shape. When he looked at me, his eyes seemed to be lifeless and on the verge of drying up. I seemed to have had a very long dream. "We won," he said softly with a hoarse voice. "We already won." I walked forward quickly and held his hand tightly. "Are you dumb? We won 10 days ago. We can go back very soon." "No." He coughed weakly and tried to sit up. I quickly extended my hand and helped him up with another servant. "Are you hungry?" I saw the flowers and grass. As far as the eye can see, everything is jade green, growing and multiplying endlessly, incomparably gorgeous. I recalled what the doctor had said to me in private. His Majesty might pass away soon. If he were to wake up again, it would be a final burst of consciousness. Your Highness, you have to seize the opportunity and say what you have to say. I clutched his hand tightly, as if I wanted the invisible will to continue supporting me. Didn't you say that you wanted to go to the Sea of Forgetfulness after everything was over? Yes, I saw it. He suddenly turned and held my hand. There seemed to be a beam of light in his dim eyes. I saw the boundless Sea of Forgetfulness. There was really everything in the dream. I even saw a huge ship sailing towards me. I vaguely saw someone on the boat, waving at me non-stop. It was a pity that I couldn't see her face clearly. She should be here to pick me up. I silently turned my head and hurriedly hid the tears in my eyes. You are tired. Have a good rest. I'm not going to rest. He shook his head and grabbed my hand with all his strength. In the future, there will be plenty of time to rest. Why don't you talk to me for a while more? I'm afraid I won't have the chance to talk to you like this again. Nonsense. An evil person like you will naturally bring calamity to the human world. You will bring calamity to the world for thousands of years. He laughed. Even his coughing seemed weak and half dead. Mo Lien, promise me one thing. Go ahead. I didn't even dare to turn around. I was afraid that once I turned around, I wouldn't be able to control my emotions and tears would flow out of my eyes. I was afraid that I would break down in front of him. That would be too ugly. When I die, you can bury me on the grassland. There's no need to bring me back. He held my hand and sighed softly. I want to be able to see the boundless sky when I raise my eyes. I have a feeling that someone is waiting for me in the sky. Mo Lien, can you promise me? I think I may never forget it in my lifetime. He was dressed in a moon-white unlined garment, and his eyes were filled with a hint of death. I recalled the first time I'd met him. He was wearing a crimson armor and riding a horse. That night, I'd sat next to him in silence and watched him toss and turn for half the night. He'd coughed a few times. He'd stopped moving in the second half of the night. I sat next to his bed in a daze for a long time. Then, I lay there and cried for half the night as I watched his body gradually turn cold. What do you think? You always say what you think every time. I still think that you won't die. I still think that we shouldn't live like this for the rest of our lives. You, on the other hand, didn't care when things were half done. You left me to clean up the mess. In the end, I was the only one who had to bear everything silently. Then, I followed his will and buried him on the Pingjin grassland. The day I buried him, the sky was especially bright. There was a red glow in the distance. I raised my head to take a look. I didn't know if it was a hallucination or an illusion, but I seemed to see a blurry figure sitting on a cloud coming to pick him up. If I could, I really wanted to go with them. I would travel the rest of my life and not have to worry about the things in front of me. However, I still have my share of responsibility to bear. It took me about 100 years to slowly rebuild the devastated continents of the 3 provinces. I became the only monarch in the 3 prefectures, but I would always wake up in the middle of a dream. I would sit at the head of my bed in a daze, night after night, until dawn. It was too strange. All these years, I seemed to have had a very long dream on and off. The dream became more and more realistic and clear. I could even hear our laughter coming out of the dream. It sounded like we were having a good time. Who was it? Who was it that was laughing so happily? It sounded like my own laughter. It was strange. I hadn't laughed for almost 100 years. What is laughter? I have long forgotten what it is, so why am I laughing so happily? Hu Dequan was very old. Every step he took was very strenuous. 2 young eunuchs would often have to help him walk. He walked unsteadily. "Did your majesty stay up all night again?" Hu Dequan sighed and asked the 2 young eunuchs to help me change my clothes. "The flowers in the imperial garden are blooming very well today. Your majesty, do you want to go out for a walk? What's the point of walking back and forth by yourself?" I shook my head. "I want to forge something. Let's do it for a while." Hu Dequan accompanied me in the hall. He sat quietly on the side and watched me forge a small golden sword. His eyes were slightly moist. "Every year, your majesty, around the New Year festival, you would forge a small sword for children to protect themselves with. It has been like this every year. It has been dozens of years, but you have never given one away." I looked at the small sword floating in the fire and suddenly smiled. "Hu Dequan, I always feel like I have a son." I accompanied him on horseback and archery. Treading mountains and rivers, traversing thousands of rivers and mountains. I was immersed in my dreams. Sometimes, I didn't even want to wake up. When I woke up, I would cry bitterly. I felt that I might have missed out on the most important thing in my life. A young eunuch ran in and knelt on the ground. With a trembling voice, he said, "Your Majesty, the retired emperor has passed away." My hand trembled slightly. Hu Dequan supported me with his trembling hands. I staggered a step and tilted my head to look at the clear blue sky in the distance. In the end, I really became a loner. I had no other relatives. Chapter 57:15. "Ah, Exian, look at that. That little trash is copying the scripture of peace very seriously after knowing that you're injured." Pfft, Shi Yongqian raised her hand and covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Her eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. "Isn't that funny, ah, Exian?" Qin Exian stood indifferently at the door and looked coldly at the scene in the room. The girl who could not move her limbs and could only turn her head slightly. She was biting the pen in her mouth and writing the scripture of peace word by word. "Don't you think it's funny? She's clearly a piece of trash who can only lie down, yet she wants to show off in front of you. It's the little handmaiden beside her who has to grind the paper, wipe her sweat, and flip the pages from time to time. She's probably just looking for something to do. After all, lying there all the time without being able to do anything was too depressing for a girl who always wanted to excel in everything." Shi Yongqian giggled and covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Qin Exian glanced at her and did not know what was so funny. "Ah, Exian, don't tell me you've really fallen for this little trash. What a joke." Qin Exian was very impatient with this woman's retarded probing. "Hee, but look, after you saved her, she seems to think of you as her sky and thinks of you in everything. How can I fall for someone whose all 4 limbs are useless?" Qin Exian sneered and spat out a cold sentence. "She's just a little pet that I picked up on the way home." Qin Exian threw this sentence and turned to leave. Shi Yongqian smiled and took 2 steps forward and reached out to stop him. "Ah, Exian, wait." She stomped her feet coquettishly. "I think that this little pet of yours is really annoying. I don't like it when she copies the scripture of peace for you. What do you want?" Recently, his father had been trying to win over the Shi family. In order to make second Miss Shi happy, Qin Exian was willing to coax her a little. "She's an eyesore to me." Second Miss Shi giggled. "What do you say I tear up that scripture of peace?" For some reason, Qin Exian's heart skipped a beat. Then, he said the 2 words that he regretted the most in his life expressionlessly. "Up to you." Arbor found it very pleasurable to copy the Sutra of Peace. Because she finally had something else to do. She didn't have to lie there day and night, staring blankly at the ceiling. Aunt Hui, who rarely took care of her, was very dedicated and willing to help her. Finally, she was able to derive a trace of pleasure from copying. No, it was power. Arbor didn't know what was going on when the second daughter of the Shi family kicked her door open and barged in with her men. It was only when the two vicious maidservants by Shi Yongqian's side kicked away the inkstone by her hand and stepped on the stack of paper that Shi Yongqian was holding. Only then did she realize that the second daughter of the Shi family was here to pick a fight with her again. These days, she had been coming to find fault with her. No matter how she looked at her, she didn't like her at all. Now that she was hiding in her room and quietly copying the Sutra of Peace, was that an eyesore to her? As Xiao Mu gazed at the pile of scriptures that had been crushed to pieces by their feet, Xiao Mu felt a bit of sorrow in her heart. She had spent a lot of time writing it word by word. It had been a long, long time since she had done something so meaningful. "You're in the way." The two vicious maidservants by the second daughter of the Shi family kicked her over. Aunt Hui hurriedly ran over to help her, but was whipped in the back by the second daughter of the Shi family. She fell to the ground and didn't get up again. "Aunt Hui, Aunt Hui!" Arbor called out in panic. "So noisy." Shi Yongqian scolded with a cold expression. "How dare a little bug make such a harsh sound? Teach her a lesson." The two vicious maidservants walked up with bad intentions and kicked Arbor hard in the stomach. The other person squatted down and grabbed Arbor's yellow hair. She reached out to grab a packet of medicinal powder and poured it into her mouth. The bitter and spicy taste filled her throat. Cough, cough, cough. Arbor coughed heavily. Her originally crisp voice became hoarse. Every word she said was like rolling over the tip of a knife. It was especially painful. "Enough." Qin Xian frowned and dragged Shi Yongqian away from Arbor. Arbor lay on the ground and turned her little face with some difficulty, trying to see the young master's expression clearly. It turned out that he had been standing at the door all along, watching everything that was happening in front of him. Arbor's slightly warm heart sank bit by bit. As expected, she was just a pitiful little bug that the young master had picked up along the way. What a joke. She still had strange fantasies. She always felt that this person could treat her like a normal person. Well, it turned out that it was just wishful thinking. Ever since Shi Yongqian sent her on the ship to Sichuan. She wanted to die but didn't succeed in the end. In the next few days, the young master of the Omega Kotoku kept staring at her as if he was sick, guarding against any suicidal moves. Actually, she was now being whipped by second Miss Shi and didn't even have the strength to raise her head. What else could a pitiful little bug who couldn't even raise her head do? She didn't know why this Qin Xian always stayed by her side and kept muttering something, but she couldn't hear a single word. As her body got better day by day, one day, she could suddenly move her fingers. On this day, the second young master happily held her hand and said softly to her, "Xiao Qiao, your body is about to recover. When your wrist can move again, can you copy a paragraph of the Peace Sutra and give it to me?" Arbor didn't say anything, her eyes were still and lifeless. After a few more days, she could force herself to walk a few steps with the help of the wall. The second young master happily handed her a pen and paper and helped her to sit down at the table. "Xiao Qiao, you can copy it." After an hour, Arbor didn't move. After 2 hours, she was still the same. After several hours, there was only a blob of ink on the paper, but she lay on the table and fell asleep. Copying something as ridiculous as the Peace Sutra. The word peace was long gone from her. She shouldn't ask for such a luxurious thing anymore. Anyway, she didn't have peace and happiness anymore that day. Arbor didn't know that Qin Xian stood beside her and was in a daze for a long time. She didn't know when she woke up. He walked forward, wanting to carry her and put her on the bed to sleep. But she was still very repulsed by his approach in her dreams. Only then did the second young master realize that there were many things that you couldn't turn back when you wanted to. But he was still unwilling. He tried his best to salvage the situation. When Suyi dreamed about it, he would occasionally think about it. If I hadn't treated her like this back then, would everything have been different? Chapter 57:16. He's over there. Chase after him. Urgent shouts suddenly came from the corner of the street, causing a small commotion and panic. Don't worry about anything else, just kill him. Flustered and exasperated voices mixed with the shocked cries of the people on the street as they chased after him like a dog jumping over a wall. The small merchants and peddlers who had set up their stalls were hurriedly packing up their things. Suddenly, they were rudely bumped into by the soldiers who were chasing after them on the street. Immediately, there was a sudden commotion. At this time, a luxurious carriage with pearls slowly drove out of the long street and headed in this direction. The curtains of the carriage were made of the highest quality ice silk, and there were fist-sized pearls hanging from the four corners of the roof. The ice silk curtains slowly fluttered in the wind. The carriage jolted slightly, and the carriage driver hurriedly pulled on the reins, not noticing a shadow flashing behind him. In an instant, a cold wind carried a figure nimbly into the carriage. A bright dagger was pressed against his throat in a second. Don't make a sound. If you make a sound, you'll cut young master's beautiful little face. The red-clothed youth was 13 or 14 years old. His black eyes flickered, and his face was like a peach blossom. His pitch-black hair was raised high, and his forehead hair was scattered, but he was full of vigor. The young master sitting in the carriage was wearing a snow-white, long-sleeved robe, and was flawless. Even when the dagger was pressed against his throat, he still didn't panic, and his face was calm. His gaze fell on the red-clothed youth, and he nodded imperceptibly. Ha! Although the dagger in the red-clothed youth's hand was still pressed against his throat, his eyes couldn't help but roll. This person actually didn't lose his head out of fear and scream like a normal person. With such a calm and composed demeanor, it was hard to imagine that he was a young master from the Southern Wind restaurant. Who are you? Seeing that he didn't answer, the youth rolled his eyes again. Are you going to Governor Wang's manor for an appointment? TSK, 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 how can such a graceful and outstanding beauty be willing to become Governor Wang's plaything? Do you want me to save young master from the fire and water? Stop the carriage. There was a burst of noise outside, as well as the reply of the carriage driver. Soldiers, we're hurrying to Governor Wang's manor. We can't miss the time. Stop the car when I tell you to. Cut the crap. The red-robed youth frowned slightly, thinking about how to escape. Suddenly, he felt his wrist tighten, and he was inexplicably pulled to the side of the white-clothed young master. This strength didn't seem to belong to someone who was weak. While the young boy was puzzled, he saw the man quickly lift up a partition and shove him in. It turned out that there was a hidden compartment in the carriage. If one were to curl up inside, it would be just enough to fit a thin and weak person. If he was slightly fatter, he might not be able to dodge it. The curtain of the carriage was suddenly lifted by someone, and the interior of the carriage could be seen at a glance. A young master in a snow-white robe was holding a cup of tea in his hand. He glanced at them indifferently. The coachman was very angry. I already told you that my young master is alone in the carriage. We still have to rush to Governor Wang's residence. If we are late to the banquet, you will have to bear the consequences. At this moment, the man who had lifted the curtain to save his life seemed a bit embarrassed. He hurriedly cupped his hands towards young Master Shui. My apologies, my apologies. Then I won't disturb young master any further. Young Master Shui's eyebrows didn't move at all. He only slightly lowered his head. In just a few breaths, the curtain of the carriage was lifted again. The man in the lead looked around the carriage again with a sharp gaze. After finding nothing, he slammed the curtain down. Let's go. Preposterous. Preposterous. These people simply don't put the governor in their eyes. They actually dared to check their carriage again and again. Who did they think they were? The entire border stronghold was under the command of Governor Wang. These people actually dared to not give the governor face. When they returned, they would definitely find a chance to report them. The coachman cursed as he waved his whip. The wheels of the carriage started to turn again. Young Master Shui lifted the partition and pulled out the young master in red. He looked at him with a faint smile. If I didn't guess wrong, you should be Princess Wuxia, who is wanted by the entire city. The young boy in red wrinkled his nose and looked him up and down. Who are you? You have cultivation. You don't seem like a little boy from the South Wind restaurant. Young Master Shui smiled faintly and raised his eyebrows. He threw 2 words at him. Guess. Guess, guess, guess your head. The young boy in red glared at him unhappily and asked curiously, do you know how much the bounty is? I heard that it has risen to 1,000,000 spirit coins. If you have accurate information about the princess, you can sell it for 50,000 spirit coins. Wu Shuang giggled. Then why didn't you hand me over just now? Young Master Shui smiled at her. People of my generation do things according to their preferences. I wasn't willing to hand you over just now, but it doesn't mean that I don't annoy you now. If you continue to argue with me, we will reach the governor's mansion soon. At that time, no matter how high your cultivation is, it will be difficult for you to escape. Wu Shuang was a little angry. She gritted her teeth. I know that Wang Rengui has a banquet tonight. How about I disguise myself as your servant and go with you? Young Master Shui smiled faintly. Do you think the people in the governor's mansion are all fools? I am just a servant of the South Wind restaurant. It is already a big deal to make an exception and attend the banquet. How many pairs of eyes are watching me? If I take you with me, do you think that your life is too long, or do you think that I am not stupid enough? Princess Wuxia snorted. I see that you have a little brain, so I thought that you might be able to help me a little. Forget it. Since you don't want to take me in, then I will think of a way myself. Seeing that they were about to reach the governor's mansion after crossing this street. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't be able to leave after a while. Before leaving, Wu Shuang turned around and flirtatiously lifted his chin. Beauty, don't worry. Since I said that I would save you from the fire and water, I naturally won't go back on my words. Wait for me to come back and pick you up. Young Master Shui couldn't help but laugh. After saying that frivolously, Wu Shuang quickly flashed out of the carriage. Although her figure was fast, the carriage driver was shocked by her. He hurriedly pulled the reins and turned to open the curtain. Young master, that person just now. Heavens, when did that person sneak onto the carriage? The carriage driver realized that he didn't notice at all. Could it be that those vicious people who blocked the carriage were chasing after him? Don't make a fuss. Young Master Shui said faintly. Continue to walk forward. Just pretend that nothing happened. Hearing this, the carriage driver hurriedly nodded. Yes, yes, young master. The curtain of the carriage was lowered again. A cold murderous intent flashed through Fu San's eyes. Going to the governor's mansion tonight, his first task was to take the opportunity to go to Wang Rengui's study and collect all the evidence of his crimes. Chapter 57:17. He couldn't allow such a person to continue living in the frontier fortress. If he really couldn't find any evidence, he didn't mind making this person disappear from the world. It was a way to solve the problem once and for all. The starry night shone as the moon waned. That night, Governor Wang Rengui held a banquet in the back residence to entertain everyone. This person's status in Pang City Fortress was equivalent to that of a local tyrant. Who would dare to not come after being invited by him? The rich and gentry gathered in the hall, all of them glowing with health and fawning over him. They had also brought many beautiful young men and women to the governor on this trip. It was said that the governor liked beautiful people the most. He could control 3 to 5 people in a night and was very brave. After 3 rounds of wine, everyone started to dance. Just as they were drunk and in a daze, they heard an explosion from the back study. Then, flames shot up into the sky. Wang Rengue jumped up from his seat with a face full of anger. He opened his mouth and shouted, "Who dares to cause trouble in my residence? Quickly go and catch them." Just as everyone was hurriedly investigating the suspicious people in the residence, a stray arrow flew from the sky and pierced through Governor Wang's chest. Everyone was dumbfounded. Many people scrambled and screamed, "Governor Wang has been assassinated. Quickly come and save him." In the distance, everyone saw Governor Wang fall heavily to the ground like a collapsing statue. His head was tilted to the side and he didn't move at all. The soldiers rushed out and pulled out their swords as they roared, "Someone assassinated the governor. Catch them and cut them into pieces." Hee hee. And Wuxia sat on the eaves and smiled as she looked at the man who had rushed out of the back door of the study. He was in a somewhat sorry state. Not only was his face covered in dirt, but his snow-white clothes were also covered in dust. It was so dirty that it was impossible to tell his original color. "You set the fire?" Fu San coughed heavily a few times. He had been choked by the thick smoke just now and felt that his throat was very dry. It was like smoke was coming out of his mouth. That's right, that's right." Princess Wuxia smiled and shook her head. She turned her eyes and smiled at him. "How long will it take for someone like you to find evidence of his crime? The evidence of this person's crime is too numerous to record. He will die sooner or later anyway. It doesn't matter if he dies early or late." Fu San heard the sound of footsteps in the distance and couldn't help but smile bitterly. "He died quickly, but our situation now is difficult. The entire Viceroy Manor had at least a few thousand elite soldiers, if not tens of thousands. 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. Now they could only run. The governor's soldiers and Wuxia. Wuxia seemed to be very familiar with the place. She led Third Fu forward and occasionally turned back to shout at him, "Hold on tight, we're almost there." Wuxia thousands of Wuxia chased them flus tst Wuxia stt Wuxia tss Wuxia ordered. Wuxia and Wuxia jumped into the water with a splash. The soldiers chased after them and released the power of the 5 spirits into the water. The 5 spirits of different colors blasted the water surface and formed small waterspouts. Fu San and Wuxia jumped into the water and buried themselves deep in the water. The turbulent spiritual energy on the surface of the water couldn't disturb the 2 of them. But the whirlpool was huge. Wuxia and Wuxia struggled for a while, but they were still pushed toward the center of the water. Wuxia turned her head and saw that the man's body was sinking. It seemed that something was wrong. She looked again and saw that there was an arrow in the man's back. He must have been shot just now. A layer of black blood came out of the wound. He was poisoned. Wuxia was shocked. She couldn't help but feel confused. This guy didn't say anything when he was injured. He was still holding on until now after entering the water. Wuxia hurriedly kicked the water and swam to his side. She grabbed his body and stuffed a detoxification pill into his mouth. Wuxia dragged the man and swam for a while. She popped her head out and coughed a few mouthfuls of water. She then pulled Third Fu out of the water and dragged him to the shore. He couldn't stay in the water for too long. It was time to go ashore first. However, the soldiers of Governor Wang's manor might not let them off so easily. If those people came along the river bank and went downstream, they might find the 2 of them. Therefore, he had to run a little further. Wuxia carried him on her back. She held her breath and ran dozens of miles in the night. After finding a relatively secluded cave, they dragged the man in and settled him down. That night, Fu San's wound turned red. He was also in a daze from the fever. Wuxia kept feeding him water. She took out all the antidote pills in her inner world. She didn't know which one could cure the poison in his body, so she fed him all the antidote pills. The next morning, the man's fever disappeared magically. But he started to have diarrhea. He ran out 7 or 8 times in the morning. When he came back for the 9th time, he looked at her with an indescribable expression. "Can you not mix the laxative into the antidote pills? Give it to me." Wu Shuang pouted. "People who fight wars don't care about trifles. I see that more than 10 antidote pills can't cure your fever and wake you up. Maybe you can get better if some of the poison in your stomach is removed. Luckily, you are not an elixir master. No, otherwise, not many people can escape from your hands." Fu San rolled his eyes speechlessly. How could she cheat people like this? He was cured of the poison, but he was about to collapse from diarrhea. "I am in Wushuang. What about you?" Fu San turned and saw the little girl sitting at the entrance of the cave. She was holding a pile of firewood. She looked back and grinned at him. Fu San, the shadow guard of the emperor. Wushuang suddenly realized. "Oh, the emperor sent you here. Are you going back to the capital after solving the problem here?" Fu San nodded. "Aren't you going back?" "I'm not going back. I've solved Wang Rengui. There are still many things in the fortress that I need to take care of. The entire fortress has been immersed in the tyranny of the Wang family all these years. It's time to tidy it up. We have to let the people in the fortress live a comfortable life." She threw the roasted pheasant to him with a smile. "I'll treat you." Fu San took a bite. After a few years, he always felt that this was the most delicious thing in the world. How could it compare to the delicious half of the roasted pheasant from back then? "Then I'll stay and help you. It won't be too late to leave after a while." The girl looked back and smiled at him. She nodded excitedly. "This place is much more fun than that lifeless place in the capital. I can take you to ride horses and shoot arrows around. The endless scenery is at the dangerous peak. I'll take you to see it." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.